Chapter 261, Lords and Vassals. In the fireplace, sparks occasionally flew from the fire, landing on the stone floor with a faint crackle. The new lord's voice remained gentle, but Baron Greven felt a chill run down his spine upon hearing it. His Adam's apple bobbed nervously as he replied, "Yes, yes, Lord Greene." The firelight flickered in Greene's eyes, resembling twinkling stars. He gently rubbed the body of his wineglass and said, "Greven, since you have identified the problem, it seems you might also have a solution. Shall we hear your idea?" Baron Greven felt the intense gaze of his daughter upon him, but he kept his eyes fixed, as if unaware. After a brief pause, he said, "Lord Greene, perhaps you could adopt Robert Arryn as your son and rule the entire valley as his guardian. I believe that before young Robert reaches adulthood, it will be enough to consolidate your right to rule." "It's a nice idea, but it can't be done," Greene replied, taking a sip of summer red wine. "I came to the valley in the name of King Joffrey. The power to dispose of Duke Arryn lies with the king. I do not have that authority." Shaking the wineglass in his hand, he added, "Loyal Greven, I can tell you directly that Duke Arryn is King Joffrey's trophy. The king will personally judge him, and he is running out of patience." "Judgment?" After a moment of silence, Baron Greven said worriedly, "Lord Greene, please forgive my bluntness. If young Robert leaves the valley, he is likely to be exploited by those with ulterior motives. I think this will not be conducive to your rule over the valley." Greven Hesse looked at the new lord with a very sincere expression. He must not leave the Arryn family a chance to make a comeback. Otherwise, he couldn't even imagine the fate of the Hesse family. Greene seemed to understand Greven's concerns. "There will be no room for the Arryn family to survive in the valley. You can rest assured, my loyal baron." He hesitated for a moment, tapping the armrest of his chair with his fingers, then said, "Greven, someone privately reported to King Joffrey that Robert Arryn is not Jon Arryn's son. He is a bastard born from Lysa Tully's affair." "How is this possible?" Baron Greven blurted out, and his children looked equally shocked. Then, as if struck by a sudden realization, Baron Greven quickly said, "It's possible. No, I mean that young Robert is indeed a bastard. He is the bastard of Lysa and Peter." Greene frowned slightly, appearing somewhat unconvinced. "Greven, what I told you is just King Joffrey's suspicion," he sighed softly. "This is one of the reasons why the king ordered me to send troops. The just Majesty Joffrey will never allow the crime of blood confusion to occur under his Iron Throne, so he must judge it himself." Baron Greven's face turned red with excitement. He paused and said, "Lord Greene, there are many people in the Eyrie who also know this secret. They have chosen silence in order to survive." "You mean witnesses?" Greene raised his eyebrows slightly and asked again, "Real witnesses?" Baron Greven nodded. "Yes, there are witnesses. I believe they will be willing to testify before the just king." After pondering for a moment, Greene continued, "You promise they are true witnesses? King Joffrey does not like to be deceived." Baron Greven's eyes flashed slightly, and he nodded again. "Lord Greene, no one dares to lie before the just king. These are people who have witnessed the truth with their own eyes, I can assure you." After a short pause, he continued, "I guarantee this is true, my lord." Greene then nodded with relief. "Very good. As your lord, of course, I will trust my vassal. Thank you for your honesty, loyal Greven." After a while, a maid walked lightly and whispered into Greene's ear. He nodded and said, "Let's serve." After Greene's command, the scene shifted to the next phase of their plan. The small dinner began as the three members of the Hershey family took their seats. Waiters and maids brought out gourmet dishes, mushroom bisque, followed by an apple, nut, and raisin salad, crab claw pie, roasted lamb with leeks and carrots, goat cheese, and baked apples in hollow loaf pans. A singer played the harp, and the sweet music filled the small hall of the Gates of the Moon. Greene raised his glass and said, "To the peace of the Seven Kingdoms." When Greene drank his fifth glass of wine, Ryan Hershey stood up, prompted by a signal from his father. He made a chest salute towards Greene and raised his voice, saying, "Lord Greene, please allow me to fight for you. I only need 50 skilled swordsmen, and I promise to capture the Eagle's Nest city for you." Greene's eyes moved slightly. He glanced at the gratified Baron Greven, but refused. "Brave Ryan, the mountain road to the Eagle's Nest city is too dangerous. You are the heir of Baron Greven. Don't take risks easily. He added, as far as I know, with the reserves of the Eagle's Nest City, they can only last for 1 year at most. As a lord, I will not put the heirs of my vassals in danger. I am patient. Ryan Hershey seemed a little surprised. He opened his mouth and said, but. Greene pressed his hand gently. The Hershey family is loyal. I will not let you lack military exploits. I will wait for the day when I can canonize you as a knight of glory. Greene's soothing words made Ryan even more anxious. He didn't notice the silent signal from his father. He hurriedly said, but we have made an appointment with Sir Egan, and they will. The hall fell into sudden silence. Aye. Ryan stammered, realizing he had said something he shouldn't have. His eyes scanned the room in panic. Beads of sweat formed on his father's forehead, and his sister was quietly staring at Lord Greene? She didn't seem to be aware of the current situation. Finally, his eyes moved to the main seat. Lord Greene still had a slight smile on his lips, seemingly unbothered by the secret Ryan had accidentally revealed. Ryan felt a little relieved. Greene's voice was low. Ryan, which member of the Egan family is Sir Egan? The Egan family was one of the nobles in the valley. Their family emblem had a blue and white background with a golden sun, a white crescent moon, and a silver star. Their motto was night and day. Hearing Greene's question, Ryan's heart skipped a beat. He wiped the sweat from his cheeks and said, yes. For some reason, he couldn't express what he wanted to say. Too nervous, Ryan looked directly at his father. Baron Greven scolded, what are you looking at me for? Didn't you hear Lord Greene asking you? Ryan nodded blankly, and then Greene comforted him. Ryan, don't worry. He ordered the waiter, pour him some wine. When the wine was poured, Ryan finally regained his senses and drank it in one gulp. Just as he was about to explain, Greene said, just tell me the answer, Ryan. A sharp flash appeared in Greene's eyes. Ryan swallowed and said, Lord Greene, he is Sir Vardis Egan. He was the captain of Duke John Arryn's guard in the Red Keep. When Duke John was still alive, Greene had seen the silver-haired, broad-faced, muscular Sir Vardis in the Prime Minister's tower. He tapped his chin and said, what does he want? Ryan scratched his head, then shook it, and looked at his father. Baron Graven's face turned red from his eldest son's actions. He bowed deeply to Greene and said respectfully, my lord, Sir Egan heard that the Queen Regent's trust is more important than yours. He hopes to serve in the Red Keep. Greene tapped the armrest with his slender fingers a few times and said, I will find a good position for him among the gold-robed Red Keep guards. Greene looked at Lean, who still had a nervous expression on his face. He raised the corner of his mouth slightly and said, Lean, did you hear that? I'll let you choose the manpower. Can we have dinner at Eagle's Nest City tomorrow? It's up to you. Upon hearing the Lord's words, Lean, who was already in his early 20s, suddenly felt the urge to cry. His lord was too kind, and he wanted to enter Eagle's Nest City immediately. He knelt down suddenly and said, I will not let you down. I promise, sir. Greene left his chair, personally helped the excited Lean up, and said, this is a rare achievement. I will wait to canonize you as a knight at the Baylor Cathedral in King's Landing. I will also ask the Archbishop to anoint you with holy oil. Patting Lean's shoulder, he added, go ahead and get ready. As you command. Lean Hershey took a few steps back, lowered his head, and placed his hand over his chest. Then he flicked his pink cloak, turned around, and strode away. Greene motioned for the others to leave, leaving only himself, Greven Hershey, and Miranda Hershey in the small hall. He did not return to the dining table, but sat on the chair in front of the fireplace. Leaning back, he rubbed his brows. Baron Greven quickly walked over, knelt in front of Greene, and said, Sir, I am ashamed of my own cleverness. I dare not ask for your forgiveness. I only ask for your punishment. Greene sighed, and Baron Greven lowered his head even further. After a pause, Greene said, Greven, the second heir of the Arryn family, is imprisoned in a cell in Iron Oak City. Baron Greven raised his eyes and glanced at Greene, who looked calm, and cautiously asked, Sir, are you referring to Harold Harling? Greene nodded and said, Credit is credit, fault is fault, but credit can occasionally make up for some mistakes. His brown eyes locked onto Baron Greven as he continued, Use him to prove your loyalty to Crab, to the people in the valley. If you do it well, not only will I completely forget the unpleasantness of tonight, but I will also make the Hershey family one of the most noble families in the valley. You can regard this as my promise to you, and Crab will never forget it." Baron Greven's pupils shrank, and he raised his voice. "I obey, Lord Greene. The Hershey family will always remember your kindness and generosity. Miss Miranda, please help Baron Greven up." The next day at dawn, Lean Hershey led 52 blue-robed elites up the mountain road to Eagle's Nest City. As evening approached, with the support of Sir Vardis, Crab's Marsh Marigold banner flew above the spires of the Eyrie. Robert Arryn, Duke of the Eyrie, Warden of the Vale, and Warden of the True East, became Crab's prisoner. Although the Stark-Tully coalition led by Robb Stark was invincible in the west, their plan to ambush the Lannisters was thwarted because Edmure Tully blocked Lord Tywin's reinforcements at the Red Fork. This disrupted the battle plan of the Lannister reinforcements. When Kevan Lannister returned to the west, he commanded the Lannister army to fortify the dangerous terrain. This left Robb Stark, who mainly relied on cavalry, unable to find a way to deal with it. Later, Robb set his sights on Cliff City, located on the western coastline of the Western Territory, whose walls were in disrepair. Robb planned to use this place as their temporary stronghold in the Western Territory after conquering Cliff City. While resting his troops, he would also use the port of Cliff City to transport the property plundered by his lords in the Western Territory on sea ships to boost the morale of the army. However, the ruined walls of Cliff City withstood repeated attacks by the Stark-Tully coalition. Crag Castle could not be captured for a long time, and Robb Stark personally joined the siege in desperation. The addition of the King of the North and the King of the Trident instantly boosted the morale of the besieging forces. The victory at Cliff City had boosted the morale of the Stark-Tully coalition. However, the triumph came at a cost. Robb Stark had been struck by an arrow in the shoulder and had fallen into a coma. In Cliff City, Robb, who had been unconscious for 2 days and 2 nights, struggled to open his eyes. He murmured hoarsely, "Water, water." "Great, you finally woke up." "Oh, please wait." Robb vaguely heard a cheerful voice. After being given some water, he caught a glimpse of chestnut hair before losing consciousness again. When Robb woke up once more, it was already the afternoon of the next day. A girl was carefully changing the dressing on his wound. She was slender, with a small heart-shaped face framed by curly chestnut hair. Her brown eyes met Robb's as he stared at her, and her cheeks seemed to redden slightly from shyness. In a soft voice, the girl said, "King Stark, you are very strong. I think you will get better soon." Robb's voice was still a little hoarse. "Thank you for taking care of me. This should be the first time I see you, isn't it?" The girl's lips curved into a smile, revealing a row of white teeth. "Your Majesty, I am Jane Westerling, and I am honored." Jane Westerling's smile was like the summer sun, and Robb couldn't help but smile back. "I am also honored to be taken care of by you. Thank you again, Miss Westerling." "Perhaps you can just call me Jane, Your Majesty," she suggested gently. Chapter 262, The Outstanding King, Jane Westerling. Robb muttered, his eyes suddenly flashing with sharpness. "Miss Jane, do you know Lord Gavin Westerling?" Gavin Westerling was the Lord of Crag and one of Jaime Lannister's generals who participated in the siege of Riverrun. He had been captured by Robb during the Battle of Whispering Wood and was now imprisoned in Seaguard in the Riverlands. Jane picked up a towel from the basin next to her and replied, "He is my father. I learned from my brother that he is a guest in your kingdom." Robb tried to move but winced as his wound pulled. Seeing this, Jane immediately leaned over to help him lie down again. He caught a whiff of the light floral fragrance of her body. "Thank you, Miss Jane," Robb said. Jane picked up the towel again and sat on the edge of the bed. With a soft smile in her beautiful brown eyes, she said, "Your Majesty, although you are strong, you are still injured. You need to rest and recover." Robb smiled, his eyes drifting to Jane's plump figure before quickly looking away. He coughed lightly and asked, "I mentioned your brother earlier. Is he okay?" Jane gently held one of Robb's large hands and wiped it with the towel. "His name is Leonard Westerling. Leonard is my father's heir. He is impressed by your bravery." She chuckled lightly and continued, "My brother told me excitedly that he saw the real king. He was jumping up and down like a little boy at the time." Jane's voice was soft and sweet, giving Rob a warm and comfortable feeling. He listened quietly and soon fell asleep. That night, Rob's body suddenly felt hot, and Jane worked almost all night to care for him. When the sky began to lighten, Rob's fever spiked again. Jane, who was just about to rest, had to pick up the towel once more. By evening, Rob's fever had subsided. He looked at the haggard Jane and said, "Miss Jane, I'm better now." Jane smiled slightly. "You're welcome. It's my honor." She approached with a black nightgown and said, "I'll change it for you. You'll feel much more comfortable." Rob nodded. "It's time to take care of you." With Jane's help, Rob's robe was removed, revealing his muscular physique, like a statue carved from stone, full of power. Jane's graceful figure leaned forward as she put on a new nightgown for him. Her soft fingertips accidentally brushed against his skin, causing both of them to hold their breath. Rob's body became stiff. Thump, 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 thump. Their heartbeats echoed in their ears, fast and powerful like a drum. Jane, her face slightly lowered, could feel Rob's penetrating gaze. She bit her pink lips and slowly raised her face. Their eyes met, and they saw affection and expectation in each other's gaze. Their breathing echoed in the tent, like a piece of moving music, intoxicating them. First, Jane's green dress fell gently to the floor, followed by Rob's black nightgown. "Your Majesty, call me Rob." "Well, Rob, your injury." That night, the young wolf fought with injuries. The next day, Robb Stark summoned his vassals from the north and the Riverlands and solemnly introduced his fiancée and future queen, Jane Westerling, to everyone. As Robb's voice fell, a short, stocky man with a black beard spoke angrily. "King Stark, you said she is your future wife? Have you forgotten your engagement with the Frey family? You are breaking your oath." Robb replied solemnly, "I have not forgotten, Blackwalder." He stretched out a hand to hold Jane's hand tightly and continued, "But this is the reality. I will offer the Frey family a very sincere compensation." Blackwalder glared fiercely at Jane, who stood resolutely beside Robb. Walder Frey, known as Black Walder to distinguish him from his numerous relatives, stood before Robb Stark. "The ladies of the Frey family don't mind their fiancés seeking pleasure elsewhere. If you've had enough, I'm willing to handle this trouble for you," he said, a smirk playing on his lips. The dozen or so Freys behind him laughed, not out of amusement, but because they believed they had found a solution to their problem. "Enough!" Robb's voice was cold and commanding. "This is the king's order. I don't want to hear any more words that insult my wife." Havad, another Frey, suddenly stood up, his face flushed with anger. "Wife, why don't we know about this? Without the witness and blessing of the 7 gods, this woman is not a legal wife." Robb suppressed his rising anger. "I will hold the wedding immediately." Blackwalder, clearly irritated, retorted, "King Stark, the ladies of the Frey family don't mind marrying widowers." Robb's eyes narrowed as he stared at Blackwalder. "I warned you, Walder Frey." The tension in the hall was palpable. Robb's squire, Ollifa Frey, reached out to pull Blackwalder's thick arm, but was met with a harsh rebuke. "Get away, you fool!" Blackwalder turned back to Robb, his voice filled with fury. "Robb Stark, you are insulting the Frey family. The twins sent almost all their troops because of the engagement, and Lord Walder's heir died fighting for you." Robb held Blackwalder's gaze for a moment before waving his hand dismissively. "I will wait for you to calm down before discussing this matter further. Ollifa, take him out." "Get away!" Blackwalder shoved Ollifa aside and drew the one-handed war hammer from his waist. "Young cousin of the Westerling family, I'm going to smash your head!" The sound of swords being drawn filled the hall as Robb's vassals and guards surrounded Blackwalder and the Freys. Robb's voice was icy. "According to the law, it is a capital offense to draw a weapon in front of the king without permission, Blackwalder." Ollifa Frey quickly interjected, "King Robb, please forgive him." But Blackwalder rudely interrupted, "Robb Stark, I can give you my head, but I demand that the woman beside you be expelled." Robb gritted his teeth. "Great, John." John Umber, a towering man, responded loudly, "As you wish, King Robb. John Umber, in the name of the king in the north and king of the Trident, I want you to—" Before Robb could finish, Jane gently pulled him back. She shook her head slightly and whispered, "Robb, I'm fine. Please forgive him." Robb and Jane exchanged a long look before he turned back to Blackwalder, his blue eyes cold. It was Gine's kindness that saved your life. Step back, Blackwalder. This is a humiliation to me. Blackwalder spat, glaring at the other Fries. Follow me. He grabbed Olifa and stormed out with his entourage. Robb clenched his fists and scanned his vassals with sharp eyes. Does anyone else have any objections to the identity of my fiancé? Wendell Manderley, the second son of the Earl of White Harbor, stepped forward. He had a round face, a bald head, a big beard, and an extremely fat figure. Your Majesty Robb, how can the ugly Fry family be worthy of you? I am willing to marry you. My appearance is very suitable for the Marquise Frey. At first, the hall fell silent, then erupted in laughter. The Great John shouted, King Robb, my uncles all wish to take another wife, and I ask for your generosity. The laughter grew louder. Robb raised his hand, signaling for silence. I will make reasonable compensation to the Fry family. This is the king's promise. Great John raised a steel-armored fist to the sky and shouted, Long live the king in the north. Robb's Riverlands bannermen echoed, Long live the Lord of the Trident. The hall resounded with the thunderous noise of fist-bumping and stamping feet, of me since I was injured. She is kind, gentle, and has a good heart. I know the Frys are upset, but my heart belongs to Jane. I couldn't marry someone I don't love. Sir Brynden nodded thoughtfully. Love is a powerful force, Robb. But you must also consider the political ramifications. The Frys are a significant ally, and their anger could lead to further complications. Robb sighed, running a hand through his hair. I understand, Uncle, but I can't turn my back on Jane. She means everything to me. Brynden placed a reassuring hand on Robb's shoulder. I respect your decision, Robb. Just be prepared for the consequences. The Frys are not known for their forgiveness. Robb nodded, his expression resolute. I'll deal with the Frys when the time comes. For now, we need to focus on the threat from the Lannisters and Tyrells. Brynden smiled approvingly. That's the spirit. Now let's discuss our next move. We need to be strategic and anticipate Tywin's actions. Robb leaned forward, his eyes sharp with determination. Agreed. We need to gather more intelligence and strengthen our alliances. We can't afford any more mistakes. Brynden nodded. I'll send out scouts and see what information we can gather. In the meantime, you should prepare your forces and fortify our positions. Robb stood up, his resolve unwavering. Thank you, Uncle. Your guidance is invaluable. Together we'll find a way to turn the tide. Brynden smiled, a glint of pride in his eyes. I have no doubt, Robb. You're a true Stark, and the North will always stand behind you. With that, the two men left the room, ready to face the challenges ahead. The war was far from over, but with allies like Brynden Tully by his side, Robb felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. When we attacked Cliff City, she was there for me. Last night, she comforted me. I must marry her to maintain my honor, Robb declared, his brow furrowing. As for my engagement with the Fry family, I will find a way to make amends. He paused, then looked earnestly at the rough-faced Sir Brynden. Jane is gentle and sweet. She will make a good wife and a good queen for me. Sir Brynden nodded slightly. She is indeed very charming, he agreed. If I remember correctly, the Westerling family is a vassal of Duke Tywin. Yes, Robb confirmed. Jane's father once fought alongside the Kingslayer and is now imprisoned in Seaside City, awaiting ransom. Although Jane and I married without his consent, if he returns to the Lannisters, he would be in grave danger. I want to do everything I can to prevent that. I don't want Jane to lose everything because of her love for me. Chapter 263, The Outstanding King. Sir Brynden, known for his bluntness, chose a more tactful approach this time. Although he had no children of his own, he had spent considerable time with his brother's children in Riverrun. He knew that young people, especially those who had just donned a crown, did not appreciate long-winded speeches from old men. King Robb, you captured Jane's castle, and she captured your heart, Sir Brynden joked. Robb smiled shyly and happily at the mention of Jane Westerling. King Robb. Uncle, please, we are family. Just call me Robb. Your Majesty, I must decline. You have claimed the title of King of the Trident River, and you are now my king. As the king of all lords, both publicly and privately, everyone is watching you. I do not wish to be an exception. Robb took a deep breath and said, Thank you. Sir Brynden joked again. I have a small request. You can call me Brynden or the Blackfish Knight. I can still fight for the King of the Trident for a few more years. Robb couldn't help but laugh. After a moment of laughter and conversation, Sir Brendan reminded him, "If there are no surprises, we will lose the support of the Fry family, right?" At the mention of the phrase, Robb's expression darkened. If Sir Stevron were still here, I could negotiate compensation with him, but Black Walder, his name isn't just about his beard, I assure you. He's outrageous. The young wolf's eyes sharpened. He claimed that Fry girls don't mind marrying widowers. If Jane hadn't begged for mercy, I would have killed him long ago. Sir Brendan reminded him again. They say their king has severely insulted House Frey. Robb was taken aback. He shook his head and said, "That was never my intention, I promise. Sir Stevron died fighting for me, and Olipha was a loyal and brave servant. This is my fault. I will compensate Lord Walder. Apology, honor, land, money, whatever I can do." Sir Brendan sighed and said, "The Fry family has dispatched more than 2,000 troops and over a dozen Freys for you. Now, with powerful enemies everywhere, if they no longer obey orders, can Jane's family help you make up for it?" He added, "King Robb, as long as the Fry family takes action, it won't be long before everyone will have such questions." Brendan looked directly at Robb with his deep eyes. "We must prepare in advance, my king." Robb was stunned. "I have met Jane's brother, and Leonard promised me that the Westerling family will do their best to support me." Sir Brendan reached out and patted his grandnephew, who looked a little uneasy, and said kindly, "No matter good or bad, we have to face it, don't we?" Robb exhaled, nodded slightly, and said, "There are 50 people in the Westerling family, including a dozen knights." After a pause, he added, "Uncle, Jane is not only smart and beautiful, but also very kind. She has a gentle heart." Sir Brendan nodded in agreement. "I admit, the first time I saw her, I could feel that she would be a good wife." With a change of tone, he said seriously, "But now you have to place a queen's crown on her head. She cannot avoid being scrutinized by everyone." He added, "I know Lord Walder. He is not a reasonable man. He is proud and irritable, and cannot bear the slightest slight. He made a marriage contract with you, and sent out almost all his troops to make the Fry family the Queen's family. Breaking the engagement to marry the daughter of a small lord is a great insult to the twins." After listening to Sir Brendan's words, Robb seemed a little agitated. The Westerling family is descended from the first men, and their bloodline is much older than the Fry family, before the War of Conquest. The previous kings of Casterly Rock often fought with the Westerlings. The families intermarried, and another Jane Westerling was queen to King Maegor I Targaryen. Maegor I, known as the Cruel, was the only son of Aegon the Conqueror in Visenya. He was the third Targaryen king to sit on the Iron Throne and rule the Seven Kingdoms. The Westerling Ansi, Store Queen Jane, the namesake of Robb's beloved, was one of Maegor I's 6 wives. Sir Brendan couldn't help but sigh as he spoke slowly. The Frey family is indeed a relatively younger noble house among the Seven Kingdoms. Walder Frey despises the ancient bloodlines for treating his family as nouveau rich. He resents Jon Arryn for not adopting his grandson, and he even holds a grudge against my brother, the Duke of Riverrun, for refusing to let Edmure marry his daughter. Now, although you did not intentionally break off your engagement with the Freys, you have still rubbed salt in Lord Frey's wounds." He added, "The spiteful Lord Frey could divide the kingdoms of the king in the north and the king of the Trident. His twins can achieve this, and the Lannisters would be happy to support him." Robb pursed his lips and remained silent for a while before speaking with great frustration. "I thought fighting was the hardest part, Bry, but it seems I've messed up everything else." "You are already much better than most by realizing your mistakes, my child." Sir Brendan leaned forward slightly and continued, "Since His Majesty the King wants to properly compensate Lord Frey, let's try our best to do it as well as possible." Robb frowned in thought for a moment, then said, "I want to do my best to compensate. There must be something that can heal Lord Frey's wounded pride." Sir Brendan's hoarse and rich voice sounded, "Things are difficult to do, but people can." Robb raised his eyebrows and asked, "Who? Which one?" Sir Brendan quickly replied, "That man who ruined your battle plan with his cleverness, your uncle, Edmure Tully." Robb's eyes flashed with light, but he frowned slightly. "This may be unfair to my uncle. After all, he is the heir to the Duke of Riverrun. Sir Brendan shook his head slightly and said, "My child, if we lose this war, you know exactly what the result will be. Tully and Stark are family, and every member has a responsibility. We must work together to protect the honor of the family." Robb stared at Sir Brendan for a while. He tapped his chin and said, "I will talk to my grandfather and uncle." Sir Brendan shook his head again and said, "Hurry, my brother has been seriously ill for a long time. If he can help with this matter, Lord Frey will feel much better. There is Greyjoy's fleet at sea, and they are our enemies. We must return to Riverrun before the Lannisters completely block the route. The Riverlands are your battlefield, my king." After a moment of silence, Robb nodded slowly and said, "Thank you for your wise advice. I will immediately convene a war meeting. Before leaving the Westerlands, I want to give Tywin Lannister a gift." Seeing Robb about to stand up, Sir Brendan reached out to hold him and said, "King Robb, I have another proposal. I hope you will allow it." In Robb's doubtful eyes, he added, "I hope you and Jane will hold your wedding in Riverrun, not now." Robb stared at Sir Brendan and said, "I have announced this to everyone. As the king, I cannot." He paused, sighed suddenly, and after a moment of silence said, "I want to hear your reasons." Sir Brendan said slowly, "Let's first negotiate the marriage between the Tully family and the Frey family, and then hold the wedding. This will show the king's sincerity." He added, "Everyone knows that the Frey family followed you to conquer the West. By making a slight concession to take care of the Frey family's feelings, they will be grateful to you. Everyone loves a kind king even more." King Robb frowned. "But I have already promised Jenny, and I promised to marry her immediately," he said, his voice tinged with hesitation. Brendan's tone was kind but firm. "If you truly love her, help her wear the queen's crown properly. She needs everyone's love and support." When King Robb announced that his wedding to Jane was postponed, rumors spread quickly. It was said that Black Walder, who had fiercely trampled the direwolf flag in Frey's camp, was dragged back by the other Freys. 5 days later, Kevan Lannister learned that the Stark-Tully coalition was preparing to withdraw from the west. His brother, Tywin Lannister, ordered him to ensure that Robb Stark remained in the west until his return. To prevent King Robb from escaping the Lannister-held west, Kevan Lannister, who was stretched thin, had to hastily mobilize over 5,000 soldiers. His goal was to delay the Stark-Tully coalition's march, buying time to strengthen defenses near Golden Tooth and block the land passage from the west to the Riverlands. However, the Lannister army, which had just gathered at the camp near Sarsfield City, located on the south side of the River Road, northeast of Casterly Rock and southwest of Golden Tooth, was suddenly attacked by the Northern cavalry and suffered a crushing defeat. Sir Kevan's third son was captured by Robb Stark. After this battle, Kevan Lannister was unable to prevent the Stark-Tully coalition, which had seized many valuable properties, from leaving the Westerlands. Chapter 264, True Dragon and Marigold. Under the blue sky, Daenerys stood on the tower of Beautyport, her black leather armor gleaming in the sunlight. Her blood-red cloak fluttered in the sea breeze, and her violet eyes were fixed on the horizon, where the flaming red heart flag waved. Surrounding her were Mason Baker, Samwell, Barona, Foley, and others. Sir Mason spoke first. "The intelligence is accurate. Stannis' army was defeated by the Lannisters. It was a crushing defeat." Contempt flashed in his eyes. "These are remnants of soldiers who have lost their honor as warriors." Daenerys withdrew her gaze and asked, "They are not resting on Dragonstone, so why are they here? Could it be?" Sir Mason nodded. "Yes, Your Highness. Perhaps these desperate cowards want to find a place to vent their anger, or maybe they have already set their sights on Mermaid Harbor. No matter the reason." He smiled cruelly. "They chose the wrong place." Foley's rough voice interrupted. "Sir Mason, are they just showing off again? Will Stannis' defeated army dare to attack Kleb?" His words were filled with doubt, but his ferocious-looking face was full of expectation. Sir Mason glanced at Foley. "It used to be 2 or 3 ships, but today there are at least 10 warships." Foley chuckled. "Sir, we must not weaken Lord Greene's reputation." Everyone turned to Daenerys, including Sir Mason. Daenerys raised her eyebrows slightly. She knew that the Kleb warriors who had not followed Greene to join the conquest of the valley were eager to fight. After the legendary victory spread to Kleb's territory, the atmosphere became even more charged. She had to admit that she herself was somewhat affected. Not only Stannis's remnants of soldiers, but also the soldiers of the Kleber house needed a way to vent. Kleb and Stannis have a neutrality agreement, and Crabbe will not break the agreement unless. Daenerys's eyes swept over everyone and finally settled on Sir Mason. Stannis's people broke the agreement first. Sir Mason stroked his chest. Your Highness, there is no difference between the remnant soldiers who escaped from the battlefield and bandits. I believe they will not disappoint you. At that moment, the messenger's urgent voice sounded. Sir, the flag for entering the port for supplies has been raised on the opposite side. Daenerys raised an eyebrow slightly. She turned to Sir Mason. Do they really think that crabs didn't see their malice, sir? Anger flashed across Sir Mason's face. I think Stannis's army has not gotten used to the status of remnants. Maybe they think Blackwater Bay is Stannis's back garden. Daenerys looked at the sea again, her eyes narrowing slightly. Maybe they still believe in Baratheon's flag. She asked, Sir, how are you going to fight? Sir Mason replied, If an enemy ship enters the cordon of Mermaid Harbor, it will first be warned with ballistae. Daenerys's purple eyes moved slightly. Sir Mason continued, If they ignore our warning and continue to move forward, I think we can legitimately go to war. This is because they took the initiative to break the agreement between Kleb and Stannis. Daenerys tapped her chin and asked the captain of the Mermaid Harbor Guard, Foley, tell everyone about the intelligence of the fleet on the opposite side. Their flagship is a 200-oar ship, and the others are all 100-oar ships, about 12 or 13 in total, Foley reported. After a pause, Daenerys asked Sir Mason, Is there any way to keep their ship? She added, The lives of Kleb's soldiers are more valuable than those ships. If you need to exchange them with the blood of soldiers, there is no need to regret those wooden boards. Sir Mason's eyes moved below, where rows of white houses stood. After a moment of silence, he said, We can pretend to be scared and run away, luring them off the boat. He pointed to the square to the north, the port, and continued, The several squares near the port were originally designed as pockets by Lord Greene when Mermaid Harbor was built. They are ideal theft or surrounding and eliminating invading enemies, turning them into lambs to the slaughter. He paused before adding, But if we let the enemy in, the port will suffer significant losses. There was a moment of silence before Samwell spoke cautiously. Your Highness, the Princess. Daenerys looked over and said, Sam? Samwell glanced at the tense faces around him. Seeing this, Daenerys smiled and encouraged. Do you have any suggestions? Please speak up, and I will listen. Encouraged, Samwell smiled shyly. I don't have a perfect idea. I just want to point out that the repair cost of those stone houses is only a few hundred gold dragons. Counting everything else, I think the total would be about 1,000 or 2,000 gold dragons. Nervously licking his lower lip, he continued. As far as I know, a ship with 100 oars is worth at least 10,000 gold dragons, and a ship with 200 oars is worth at least 30,000 gold dragons. Their value lies in the long construction time. He leaned slightly closer to Daenerys and lowered his voice. If we can capture one, that would be good. After finally finishing, Samwell's cheeks turned red. Daenerys smiled and nodded, saying, I think we have made a decision. Thank you, Sam. The sun was dazzling. Daenerys narrowed her eyes slightly and said, Leave it to you, sir. Sir Mason stroked his chest and saluted, then strode away with Foley and others. After everyone left, Daenerys asked the question that had been on her mind. Sam, do you know why Sir Mason chose the ballista when he mentioned warning the enemy ships just now? Isn't the trebuchet more powerful? Samwell scratched his head and said, Your Highness, it's because of the accuracy. The stone thrown by the trebuchet, no one can guarantee where it will land. It might hit the hull of the ship, which would be equivalent to starting a direct war. Thank you for explaining, Daenerys added. Sam, do you understand the pocket that Sir Mason mentioned earlier? Samwell nodded. Your Highness, the stone houses around the square are connected. You can use them as walls. Ballista warning. Prepare. Following the commander's order, the soldiers in Mermaid Harbor began to operate the ballistae nervously. Two soldiers adjusted the angle of the crossbow together, and then, with a series of squeaks, the crossbow string was slowly tightened. Another soldier placed the long, thick crossbow arrow into the arrow slot. "Ballista warning! Fire!" The soldier released the crossbow string, and with a bang, the crossbow arrows roared forward. On that day, more than 600 of Stannis's remnants who landed at Mermaid Harbor encountered an ambush by Kleb. It is said that they were turned into hedgehogs by more than 1,000 of Kleb's longbowmen. At the same time, Foley led more than 700 blue robes to board the ships docked in the port. After a fierce fight, Kleb captured 8 100-oar ships and hundreds of oarsmen and sailors. The other ships, supported by the 200-oar flagship that was not docked at the port, retreated in embarrassment towards Dragonstone. Greene Kleb was leaning on a weirwood chair in the Ares Great Hall. In his hand was a list of Val nobles to be escorted to King's Landing. This was the trophy that demonstrated King Joffrey's military exploits, and Lord Greene looked at it carefully. "It's holiday soon. I'm really too busy. It's too late when I get home. Sorry. I'll make up for it later. TT. Chapter 265, Greene's Decree Shah. The list in Shah's hand was turned to the next page by Greene. He lowered his eyes and read for a while, but he frowned slightly. With his eyes closed, he tapped his knees with his fingers. After a pause, Greene said, "Go and summon Baron Greven." After giving instructions to the attendant, Greene left his chair and walked down the stairs, followed closely by the tall Brienne. As they walked, Greene said, "Brienne, Stannis was defeated. Although he withdrew to Dragonstone, he lost most of his troops." Lord Greene had received a letter from King's Landing via Raven. The content summarized that the great Tywin Lannister had defeated the evil Stannis in one fell swoop. There was no mention of Tyrion's contribution in the battle to defend King's Landing. As Tyrion's reliable ally, Greene naturally felt sad for him. Why did Lord Tywin do this? There could be various reasons, but the main one was for his heir, Jaime Lannister. When Jaime was captured by Robb Stark, like most of the lords of the Seven Kingdoms, Duke Tywin would never allow his second son's fame to surpass that of his heir, let alone Tyrion. He was still the dwarf son who disgusted him endlessly. To Lord Tywin, the fact that the noble blood of Lannister flowed through a dwarf was a shame in itself. Arriving in front of the marble wall hanging the map of the Seven Kingdoms, Greene stared at the location of Dragonstone and said, "After the Battle of the Blackwater River, Stannis's fleet was severely damaged and could no longer protect Dragonstone. The Lannisters won't even give him a chance to breathe." He stretched out his finger and pointed at the location of King's Landing, then added, "Stannis has no allies. It can be said that he has lost the qualification to compete for the Iron Throne." Brienne looked at Greene and asked, "My lord, do you think Stannis will defend Dragonstone?" Greene shook his head slightly and replied, "Stannis is as hard as iron. He will not choose to sit still and wait for death. He will leave Dragonstone before the Lannisters besiege him." "My lord, where else could Stannis go?" "Where could he go? If it were him, he would immediately seek an alliance with the proclaimed king, Robb Stark, as they had a common enemy. But in the eyes of Stannis, Robb Stark was also a traitor. With Stannis's character, even if he died, he would never join forces with traitors. This is Stannis Baratheon." Greene's eyes raised slightly, and his gaze moved to the location of the Great Wall of the North. After being silent for a while, he said, "Maybe we will meet in the ice and snow." Greene looked at Brienne and said, "Brienne, do you want to be my knight of the Bloodgate?" As soon as his voice fell, Brienne immediately shook her head. She seemed a little panicked. "Sir, my duty is to protect you. I will not be afraid of sacrifice. Please believe me." Greene reached out and patted Brienne's thick arm and said, "I will choose a new candidate for the Bloodgate Knight." After a pause, he added, "This is a promotion. I'm not dissatisfied with your performance, Brienne." Hearing this, Brienne showed an innocent smile, like a child. "I will work harder, I promise." Greene smiled, paused, and suddenly said, "I heard that you only picked a pair of horse armor?" Brienne nodded and said, "My armor was specially made for me by my father. I like it, my lord." Greene smiled and said, "As my guard, your equipment can be replenished by the quartermaster of the guard at any time. It is also your duty to arm yourself well, Brienne." "As you command, my lord." Lord Greene's warehouse was filled with countless armors, weapons, and various other equipment. The Kleb soldiers in the valley were changing their equipment according to actual needs, and his guards and clan soldiers were the first batch. Greene was walking around casually in the spacious hall. He looked around and said, "Brienne, what does the eagle's nest feel like to you?" Brienne's clear blue eyes looked around and said, "It feels like a fortress in the sky, my lord. A plaque, of strength and solitude." "My lord, this place is very luxurious," she remarked, glancing back. "Also, it's very windy and cold, and it's quite difficult to break through." "That's a good summary," Greene replied with a chuckle. He added, "Brienne, do you think this is a suitable place to raise a dragon?" "Dragon?" Brienne blinked in surprise. "Well, dragons, 3 dragons." A waiter approached and reported, "Lord Greene, Baron Greven has arrived." In the study, a roaring fire blazed in the fireplace, casting warmth and light throughout the room. Baron Greven's voice carried a hint of fatigue as he spoke. "Aelin, the territory directly under Eagle's Nest City, mainly referring to the southern part of the valley occupied by Kleb, the 3-year tax-free decree will be conveyed to the people within the next month. Each of your new subjects." Greene stared at the dancing flames in the fireplace, tapping his chin thoughtfully. Baron Greven glanced at his lord and continued, "At the same time, the news of holding the Gate of the Moon tournament in 1 year will also be sent out together." Seeing Greven's hesitation, Greene signaled the waiter to pour the wine. After the wine was poured, he spoke slowly. "Greven, the tournament is not the key." He took a sip of summer red and continued, "As far as I know, almost everyone in the valley dreams of becoming a knight. Becoming a knight is a tradition here. But to become a knight, it's not enough to have combat skills and equestrian prowess. You also need a full set of knight equipment, which has blocked most people's dreams of knighthood." He took another sip of wine and said, "I heard that many knight attendants in the valley, although qualified to be canonized as knights, have to refuse because they lack the golden dragon required for the ceremony." He looked at Baron Greven. "As the new ruler of the valley, I plan to use the tournament as a means to help those who have the ability but have been hindered by the lack of resources. They will be the new knights of the valley." Greene raised his hand, signaling Baron Greven to drink, and said, "They can be the children of farmers and craftsmen, the children of merchants, or even wanderers. I only value their abilities and their willingness to fight for me." A slight smile played on his lips. "What I welcome most are descendants of valley nobles like Rion, your eldest son." After a pause, Greene continued, "Whether from a village or a town, those who pass the assessment and qualify to participate in the tournament will receive armor, weapons, horses, and more, all provided by me. They will be granted the title of trainee knight." Baron Greven opened his mouth. "A trainee knight?" Greene nodded and explained, "Think of them as high-level mercenaries exclusively hired by Kleb. They need to swear allegiance to me and will only fight for me. The new knights of Green Valley will be born among them." Baron Greven, trying to suppress the turmoil in his heart, said as calmly as possible, "Lord Greene, please allow me to praise you. You are a kind and generous prince. God bless you." He then carefully expressed his concerns. "However, I suggest you delay your kindness and generosity. The people of the valley, who miss the Aelin family, might misunderstand your intentions. I'm worried they might refuse to participate in the tournament assessment." Greene responded, "Are you worried that someone with bad intentions will ruin my plan?" Baron Greven nodded solemnly. There was a moment of silence before Greene's deep voice broke it. "Greven." When Lord Greene called him, Baron Greven looked over. Meeting Greene's sharp gaze, he felt a pang of unease. Greene's calm voice carried the chill of winter. "You must learn to be a vassal of the Kleb family as soon as possible." Sir. Miss the Aelin family? Are you defying my decree?" After muttering to himself, Greene regained his gentle expression. He stared at Baron Greven with his brown eyes and said, "If I open the Blood Gate and allow the mountain tribes to enter the valley, will the people of the valley miss Kleb? Will they regret breaking my decree?" The Alpine clan tribe is a savage group living at the foot of the Mingyu Mountains in the valley. These tribes originated during the period when the Andals invaded the valley. Ancestors who did not want to submit to the Andals fled into the Mingyu Mountains and multiplied in the mountains and forests, forming tribes. As a result, they have retained many of their ancestral traditions and have customs similar to the savages outside the Great Wall, raiding and disobedience. They mainly rely on hunting and raiding valley villages for a living. Rumor has it that if the Duke of the Eyrie himself does not have an escort, they will still attack. Hearing Greene's hypothesis, Baron Greven suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. He had been having a smooth ride these past few days, but now he could only tremble his lips in response. Greene reached out and patted Baron Greven's arm. His voice seemed to be comforting. "Greven, I value the Hershey family very much. Don't let me down." Baron Greven finally found his voice. With a somewhat flattering smile on his face, he said, "My lord, the Hershey family will never disappoint you, I promise." Greene smiled gently and said, "Well, I believe you. Do your best. I think the title Earl Hershey is more pleasant. I will wait for you." "I'm too busy. Dear gentlemen, please wait for me to take a moment." Chapter 266, Greene's Decree. Greven Heshe couldn't help but wipe the sweat dripping from his forehead and said respectfully, "The Heshe family will always remember your gift." The Heshe family of Greven was the first valley noble to take the initiative to join Kleb. The second was the Egan family, who supported them in Eagle's Nest City. When the rewards for the Heshe and Egan families were made public, other valley nobles, such as the Klein family, the Ruthermont family, the Dutton family, and the Tollet family, all chose to submit to the new lord. These later families were loosely led by Baron Greven, who held the highest status as the financial controller of Eyrie City. This newfound power made him even more ambitious. Perhaps he could become the Prince Prime Minister of the Valley, and then, maybe, he didn't dare to continue thinking about it for the time being. His advice to Greene was ostensibly about maintaining order, but in reality, it was driven by his own selfish motives. He wanted to use the new lord's influence to strengthen the Heshe family's power. But the tourney and the trainee knights made him feel threatened. If the new lord's plan advanced, he knew too well the greed of those despicable people. He could guarantee that soon there would be new knights loyal to Kleb. As time passed, these humble people would become the new nobles of the valley. How would the honor of the old nobles be preserved? As Baron Greven pondered this, Greene's voice interrupted his thoughts. The Royce family, the Waywood family, the Hunter family, the Redford family, the Belmore family, the Tampaton family. He looked at Greven. If there were no Kleb family, they and the Aelin family would be the masters of the valley. Mr. Baron, am I right? Greene's words struck Baron Greven like a hammer. He opened his mouth, but couldn't speak. He seemed to have forgotten that before aligning with Kleb, the Heshe family was merely a minor noble family, recording the property of the Aelin family. They weren't even qualified to attend higher-level banquets. He once spent a large sum of money to secure a granddaughter from Lady Anya's Waywood family for his eldest son, even choosing an unpopular and unattractive granddaughter, but was directly rejected. When did he start considering himself a noble family in the valley? When did he dare to show sword in front of the lord known as the Bloody Earl? Reflecting on this, Baron Greven burst into tears. Greene signaled the waiter to leave the room, allowing the old baron to cry in peace. He looked at the flames in the fireplace and took a sip of summer red. Lord Greene had always been patient with his men, especially with model vassals like the Heshe family. When Baron Greven gradually calmed down, Greene said, "Don't trust your ears too much. Baron Greven Heshe, you should believe in my promise. You are a good vassal of the Kleb family." "My lord, Baron Greven sniffed. He added, "I will divide the assessment before the tournament into several areas and assign them to my new vassals." Greene signaled Baron Greven to drink and then said, "Help me keep an eye on them. The person I trust most is still you, Greven." "Lord Greene, I will always be your eyes. I swear to the 7 gods." The nobles in the northern part of the valley received a letter of distress from the messenger crow of Eyrie City. Meister Erlin's personal letter was sincere. He informed them that the gate of Eyrie City, the gates of the moon, had been destroyed by more than 200 soldiers due to traitors. In the name of Lord Robert Arryn, he made different promises to each noble family, such as marriage, titles, land, property, etc. Chapter 254. Their task was simple, to bring troops to intimidate and push back the Kleb soldiers. The Maester Erlin, who has served the Vale for nearly 40 years, understands the true needs of these families. The Duke of the Ares' sincere commitment, coupled with his quill, successfully awakened their hearts of honor that were about to fall into slumber. Then, Greene received a series of battle reports from the Kleiber Corps, who were ambushing in dangerous places. Messengers flew back and forth, bringing new harvests almost every day. 53 cavalry, 67 cavalry, 125 cavalry, 78 cavalry, 212 cavalry. The last essence of the Valley Knights was being devoured by Kleb. In the study room of Eagle's Nest City, Lord Greene, who had been busy all afternoon, finally put down his quill. Regarding the list of prisoners dedicated to King Joffrey, Baron Greven, and others, compiled a list of nearly 2,000 people, most of whom were servants serving the nobles. Lord Greene selected just over 100 people who must be sent, while the remaining individuals would be stripped of their surnames and escorted to the Crab Claw Peninsula. Eventually, they would be dispersed into hundreds of Kleb's semi-military farm camps on the Crab Claw Peninsula. Although each of Kleb's farms requires a vast hunting area, the expansive and sparsely populated Crab Claw Peninsula can accommodate at least 3,000 new farms, even with a rough calculation. However, with only a few 100,000 people on the peninsula, the expansion need not be too rapid. To meet current needs, most residents will be arranged to live on new farms and train as soldiers in their free time. When the new farms, managed by retired veterans, receive orders to mobilize troops from Lord Greene, they only need to send the reserve soldiers who have received military training on time. Considering the farms, Lord Greene thought of the main problem with the population structure of the Crab Claw Peninsula: more women and fewer men. His fingers tapped lightly on the table. Men. There was a knock on the door, and Brienne's voice came from outside. "Lord Greene, Maester Cormon is asking to see you." After receiving the response, Maester Cormon entered the study with a nervous look on his face. "Good day, Count. Count Kleb. Please take a seat, Maester Cormon." After Maester Cormon took his seat, Greene asked, "How is Duke Aaron's health?" Maester Cormon glanced at Greene and replied, "Count Kleb, the Duke's condition has improved a lot recently because he can eat the food he likes." He bowed slightly. "On behalf of the Duke, I would like to thank you for your kindness." Greene leaned back in his chair and said, "Maester Cormon, King Joffrey hopes to see Duke Aaron in the Red Keep as soon as possible." Maester Cormon's Adam's apple bobbed a few times before he said, "Kind Earl Kleb, in fact, the Duke's physical condition may be able to sustain him until the end of the journey to King's Landing. He now needs a long period of recuperation." Cormon's eyes were a little evasive, and Greene sighed. "King Joffrey's patience is only 1 month at most. Maester Cormon, I will allow you to accompany Lord Aaron on the journey." "I'm almost too busy. I have someone I can't refuse tonight. It's not easy to be a worker. I'll update these today." Chapter 267. Players at the Card Table. Lord Greene was very busy. After sending away the worried-looking bachelor Kemen, he immediately summoned more than a dozen dilapidated knight families from the valley. These families, like many others seeking refuge, seemed to have brought their unmarried daughters with them, all of whom had outstanding looks. Some of these girls appeared to be as young as 11 or 12 years old. Was the Lord of the Valley infatuated with the daughters of certain valley nobles, regardless of other considerations? Or perhaps he had a special, unknown hobby? Lord Greene, sitting on the high seat, stopped his musings. His voice echoed through the hall. "Rise and be welcomed." Greene had a slight smile on his face. As a ruler, he needed to exercise patience. After all, he was not yet familiar with these people. At this stage, Lord Greene was willing to give them more opportunities. What followed was a series of oaths, rewards, and a banquet. It was a repeat of the previous day's scene, except with different participants. More and more valley nobles joined the banquet. Early the next morning, a messenger crow carrying King Joffrey's letter arrived at the Ares Crow's Nest. In his study, Greene took the letter from Maester Erling and began to read it. The content was King Joffrey urging that his prisoners of war be sent to King's Landing as soon as possible. Rumor had it that on the day Lord Tywin entered King's Landing as a savior, he rode directly to the throne room, and his horse defecated under the Iron Throne in full view of everyone. It was said that a moved King Joffrey had to bypass the pile of excrement to embrace his grandfather, calling Lord Tywin the savior of King's Landing. Then, King Joffrey sincerely requested his grandfather, Tywin Lannister, to take charge of the entire Seven Kingdoms on his behalf. When Duke Tywin accepted the king's request, Joffrey Baratheon personally placed the Prime Minister's necklace on him. Greene guessed that King Joffrey was afraid of Lord Tywin's majesty and did not dare to react at the time. However, he must have become increasingly angry later, feeling that his kingly authority had been trampled in front of everyone. At this moment, he needed to use the prisoners from the valley to assert his majesty in front of everyone, including Tywin Lannister, who did not regard him as a true king. Greene moved his fingers. There were 2 letters in total. When he saw the handwriting on the second one, he raised his eyebrows slightly. This was a letter written by Grand Maester Pycelle. In the letter, Pycelle wrote that the Tyrell family claimed in the throne room that although Margaery had held a wedding ceremony with Renly Baratheon, Renly went to war on the wedding night and was unable to consummate the marriage. She was still a virgin. Coupled with the merits of the Tyrell family, King Joffrey had announced Margaery Tyrell as his fiancée, the future queen of the Seven Kingdoms, in front of all the nobles. Maester Pycelle's letter hinted that Queen Cersei was dissatisfied with Margaery Tyrell becoming her son's betrothed. He also wrote that, according to the merits of the Battle of King's Landing, on the day Duke Tywin entered the throne room, more than 600 people were named knights. He specifically pointed out that Lancel Lannister, who was seriously injured, was made Lord of Derry City. Derry City is the residence of the Derry family in the Riverlands and is currently occupied by the Lannister army. It is located at the intersection of the King's Road and the Trident River in the small town of Earl of Haraway. Although the castle is ancient, it is small in scale. Then, Tyrion Lannister was sent to Riverrun as Lord Treasurer and envoy of the Red Keep. The task given to him by Lord Tywin was to pay Jaime Lannister a reasonable ransom and bring him back to King's Landing safely. After reading the letter, Greene tapped his fingers on the armrest of his chair, deep in thought. After a while, he threw Pycelle's letter into the brazier nearby. Then he pulled out a blank piece of parchment, picked up a quill, dipped it in ink, and said, "Maester Erling, please inform Maester Kemen that he has 2 more months to treat Duke Aron." Waving the quill, he wrote, "Tell him that this is a gift just sent by His Majesty the King, and let him cherish it." "Yes, my lord," Maester Erling replied, leaving the study. The sound of quill on parchment filled the room as Greene began writing the troop movement order for the Crabclaw Peninsula. Although the northern region of the Vale had not yet been brought under his control, the conquest of Maidenpool in the Riverlands needed to be arranged as soon as possible. This was another step in the power game. After completing the troop movement order, he took out a new piece of blank parchment. Lord Greene spent the entire morning writing several letters. One of these letters was addressed to Lord Tywin Lannister, the King's Hand. Greene's letter briefly congratulated Duke Tywin on his appointment and then went on to praise King Joffrey's great achievements, as well as his outstanding wisdom, courage, and chivalry. What great achievements did King Joffrey have? First, despite being surrounded by powerful enemies, he decisively and forcefully sent troops to conquer the valleys that were dissatisfied with his rule. Then came the Battle of King's Landing. In his letter, Greene attributed the outcome of this battle to the victory brought about by King Joffrey's wisdom and courage. Greene transferred the credit for Tyrion's preparations for the war in King's Landing, while Lord Tywin was fighting in the Riverlands, to King Joffrey. Since Tyrion, the great hero, had been expelled by Lord Tywin, this made sense. This letter needed to be escorted by special soldiers because, in addition to the letter, there was also the appetizer that showcased King Joffrey's military exploits, Petter's Head. As for the open letter written to Lord Tywin, it would be delivered to King Joffrey first, along with the appetizer, due to negligence from the young steward of Leiden, who was now in King's Landing. Well, let's have fun picking peaches for each other. Another letter was addressed to the war artist, Lord Mace Tyrell. In the letter, Greene briefly discussed his views on the future war situation. He hoped that if there was a suitable opportunity, he would be willing to raise 30,000 troops to assist Duke Mace in conquering Riverrun and contribute to ending the war in the kingdom. He also briefly mentioned his views on the political situation in the Riverlands, expressing that peace talks were highly unlikely. Additionally, he voiced some concerns about the superior combat effectiveness of the soldiers in the north. Greene then once again congratulated Margaery Tyrell on her final decision to become Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Finally, he informed Duke Mace that a nobleman from the Vale had presented him with a precious piece of black walnut wood, shaped like a palm, with the palm of the hand forming the seat and the fingers forming the back of the chair. Greene said he had arranged for the best carpenters in the Vale to craft it into a chair, which he would send to Duke Mace as a congratulatory gift for the golden rose blooming in King's Landing. The next letter was addressed to the Maga Tower in the Red Keep, intended for Queen Cersei Lannister. In addition to the usual greetings, the main content of the letter detailed the results of the Battle of the Vale. Greene also expressed his concerns about Queen Cersei's safety and concluded by stating that the Crabclaw Peninsula and the Val were always at her disposal. Serving her would be his greatest honor. Greene stood on the balcony of the Eyrie. In the distance, the valley was surrounded by mountains, their peaks undulating against the horizon. The peaks were a breathtaking sight. Bachelor Erlin's aged voice sounded behind him. "Lord Greene, the messenger Crow has made the arrangements." "Thank you, Maester Erling," Greene replied, pausing before turning to head towards the room. He was about to meet with the mercenary leaders in the valley. They would be the main force in the siege to conquer the northern cities of the valley. Lord Greene planned to use the Golden Dragon to absorb another military organization in the valley, the mercenary groups. This required the meticulous oversight of King Greene, but it was necessary. The valley needed only one military force, the Kleb army. Amidst the low roar of the sea breeze, waves crashed against the rocks beneath Dragonstone Castle, creating huge white foams. An elevated stone arch bridge led to the central tower and stone drum tower of Dragonstone Castle. The sea breeze whistled through the arches supporting the bridge. Davos Seaworth, walking on the bridge, could smell the salty sea air, a scent that invigorated him. As soon as Earl Davos arrived at the gate of Stone Drum Tower, Sir Axel's figure suddenly appeared, blocking his way. Sir Axel Florent, a member of House Florent, was the younger brother of Lord Alistair Florent of Brightwater, the wife of Stannis, and the uncle of Selyse. He served as the acting city lord of Dragonstone Island. Lord Davos paused and looked at Sir Axel. Like the Queen, Sir Axel had the Florent family's distinctive frilled ears, with thick hair sprouting from his ears and nostrils, and tufts of hair growing from his double chin. Sir Axel had a broad nose, sharp brows, and eyes full of hostility. Prime Minister Davos nodded and said, "Sir Axel." Sir Axel, sizing up Davos, snorted coldly. "Davos, you are an unqualified prime minister who brought misfortune to His Majesty the King. You are not a believer in the King of Light. You brought him defeat." Earl Davos frowned slightly. "Sir Axel, King Stannis wants to summon me." As Davos tried to move past, Sir Axel blocked his way again. "R'hllor gave me the ability, like Lady Melisandre. I can see the future in the Holy Fire. I once saw Stannis Baratheon sitting on the Iron Throne in the Holy Fire. But you, a sinner and a smuggler, ruined my position as Prime Minister." Earl Davos, not wanting to engage with the madman, said, "King Stannis doesn't like to wait." Sir Axel did not relent. "I have foreseen the future in the Holy Fire. To achieve it, His Majesty the King must appoint me as his Prime Minister. You will advise him to do so and voluntarily step down." Lord Davos frowned. "I only obey King Stannis' orders, Sir Florent." "Queen Selyse urges His Majesty to appoint me as Prime Minister," Sir Axel continued, staring at Davos. "Even your old friend, the pirate Saladhor Saan, agrees. I made a plan with him. His Majesty's refusal is like a black worm gnawing at his heart. Loyal people should act together. If you are as loyal as you claim, tell His Majesty that I am the only suitable Prime Minister. If you do, I promise you a new ship when we set sail." "A new ship? You mean those abandoned in Mermaid Harbor?" Davos raised an eyebrow. Sir Axel first warned, I don't want His Majesty to hear this from your mouth. Then he threatened, Smuggler, I have been the acting city lord of Dragonstone for a long time. Remember, the guards here are my people. I may not be able to burn you without His Majesty's permission, but who says you won't meet an unfortunate accident? Fall down, tonight or tomorrow. Davos shrugged and replied, I admit, I don't want to fall from here. Sir Axel stepped aside with a sinister smile. Your Majesty is waiting for us. Don't keep him waiting. You know he doesn't like to be kept waiting. In the picture table hall at the top of the stone drum tower, the starry sky was visible at night, and the sounds of the wind and faint waves could be heard. Stannis Baratheon stood behind a massive map table. An iron brazier beside him glowed with orange-red coals. Stannis wore a gray woolen coat, a dark red cloak, and an ordinary black belt around his waist, from which hung a long sword and dagger. A red gold crown shaped like flames adorned his head. His short, shaved beard was streaked with gray, and his figure was so lean that every movement aled the bones beneath his skin, as if a spear might poke out. Even the crown on his head seemed too large. His eyes were deep-set blue caves, and the shape of his skull was visible beneath his face. Your Majesty, Lord Davos and Sir Axel saluted King Stannis. King Stannis looked at Lord Davos, a fleeting smile crossing his lips. My hand, you always tell the truth. I need to hear your advice. He clasped his hands behind his back. Tell me honestly, what is the punishment for betrayal, my Prime Minister? Punishment for betrayal? The words hung in the air, and Davos pondered. King Stannis had asked him the same question before. Lord Davos replied respectfully, Death is the punishment, King Stannis. King Stannis's voice was filled with anger. Someone from the Florent family suggested recognizing the bastard's claim to the Iron Throne. He wanted to sell my rights for his own power, and even proposed marrying off my only child to that bastard. Earl Davos was silent for a moment. He glanced at Sir Axel, who remained silent, and then respectfully advised, King Stannis, Earl Florent is not your traitor. Perhaps you can consider his suggestion as advice you don't like. Sir Axel's voice broke the silence. Your Majesty the King, I beg you, give me a chance to prove that not all Florentines are so weak. Chapter 268, The King's Curse. Stannis Baratheon looked at his onion knight with deep, contemplative eyes. Davos, Sir Axel wants me to continue the war. Many believe I have completely failed. Who can blame them? Almost all the lords who swore fealty to me have deserted, and even my grandfather, Lord Ismond, has bowed to Joffrey. Eldon Ysmond, the lord of Greenstone Castle in the Stormlands, was Stannis's maternal grandfather. Lord Ysmond was captured during the Battle of King's Landing and subsequently surrendered to Joffrey's Iron Throne. Stannis continued, the few who still retain their loyalty have lost their confidence. They spend their days drinking and gambling, licking their wounds like defeated dogs. Sir Axel stepped forward. Failure is a disease. Victory is the cure. Your Majesty, fighting will cheer them up again. Victory, Stannis muttered, his dark, thin lips twisting. He waved his hand dismissively. We do need victories. Sir Axel, tell my hand your plan. I want to hear his opinion. Although Sir Axel was reluctant, he obeyed Stannis's order. He turned to Davos and began. On the Blackwater River, Count Adrian Celtigar of Crab Island fought under the Flameheart banner. After being captured, he immediately turned to Joffrey and remains in King's Landing. This man betrayed the true king. I plan to. Sir Axel's plan was straightforward. Stannis still had about 1,600 soldiers on Dragonstone. He proposed using Salat Horsan's fleet to transport them to the lightly guarded Crab Island to attack Earl Celtigar's forces, exacting revenge for his betrayal. Burn his castle, kill his people, and turn Crab Island into barren ashes and bones, with only carrion crows remaining. This way, all the 7 kingdoms will understand the consequences of taking refuge with the Lannisters. Stannis listened in silence, grinding his teeth slowly. After Sir Axel finished, he said, I believe this plan can be executed with minimal risk. Unless the Redwine family sends reinforcements from the Arbor, Joffrey will not have ships to support Crab Island. Although Crab Island has no strategic value, its fall will send a message to Lord Tywin that I, Stannis, am not dead. Stannis turned to Davos. What do you think of Sir Axel's proposal? I want to hear the truth, my hand. To be honest, although the plan sounded good, it was essentially the work of bandits. Sir Axel and his old friend Salad Horsan were targeting the wealth of the Celtigar family. Initially, they had aimed for the mermaid port of the Kleb family, but fearing defeat, shifted their focus to Crab Island. After pondering for a moment, Davos met Sir Axel's threatening gaze before turning to Stannis. King Stannis, I must say, this plan is foolish and cowardly. Cowardly? Sir Axel shouted. Smuggler, how dare you call me a coward? Davos remained silent, and Stannis said coldly, Quiet. He then looked at Davos. Go on, I want to hear your reasons, my hand. Davos turned to face Sir Axel. You want the Seven Kingdoms to know we have not failed, so you propose taking the initiative. But who is our enemy? There are no Lannisters on Crab Island. Sir Axel raised his voice. There is a traitor on Crab Island. Adrian Celtigar betrayed His Majesty the King. Davos responded directly. Are there traitors in the mermaid port of the Kleb family? You. Sir Axel glanced at King Stannis, fear flashing across his face. Mermaid Harbor. Stannis' emotionless voice cut through the tension. Davos. Tell me, what happened? Davos nodded slightly. 4 days ago, one of our squadrons attacked Mermaid Port, and we lost many ships, Stannis said, his jaw moving silently a few times before he spoke. Why didn't anyone tell me this? He looked at his prime minister, and Davos responded respectfully. King Stannis, I'm sorry, I just found out. After a pause, he added, My second son heard the news in a tavern at the port. Seeing Stannis' eyes move towards him, Sir Axel hurriedly explained, Your Majesty, they were careless. They just wanted to replenish supplies at Mermaid Port. This was a misunderstanding. I only found out about this not long ago. Misunderstanding, or a robber under the king's banner. Stannis snorted coldly and said to Davos, My prime minister, I don't need bandits to work for me. Deal with it according to the law and don't let anyone go. Sir Axel urged in a panic, Your Majesty, our military morale is unstable. We cannot. Stannis interrupted coldly, I am not the leader of bandits, and I will not leave behind people who are unwilling to follow orders. If I tolerate their crimes because of a moment of weakness, that will be a real failure, a complete failure. After his words fell, Lord Davos bowed slightly towards his king, and Sir Axel opened his mouth, but under Stannis' intimidating gaze, he did not dare to say anything further. After a pause, Davos' voice sounded, King Stannis, Lord Greene is not our enemy. Please allow me to write him a letter. Stannis' lips curled up imperceptibly, and he said, Smuggler, have you learned how to write? Lord Davos raised his eyes to look at King Stannis and replied respectfully, One of my stewards, he writes beautifully. Stannis tapped his chin and said, Leave it to you, my hand. He added, Continue the topic just now. Davos, please continue. Davos stroked his chest and said, As you command, King Stannis. He thought for a moment and said slowly, Count Celtigar, I don't doubt that he bowed his knee to Joffrey. We all know that he is an old man who has only a few days left, and his only wish is to die in his own castle, drinking fine wine from a jeweled cup every day. He looked at King Stannis. However, when you called, the old man came, with his ships and soldiers to support you. Faced with the overwhelming number of Renly's army, he followed you at Storm's End and fought. Then he sailed his ship into the Blackwater, fought for you, died for you, and was burned for you. After a pause, he continued, Yes, the guard of Crab Island is indeed lax. There are only women, children, and old people there, because their husbands, sons, and fathers died in the Blackwater River and died under our flag. That's why. His voice rose slightly. However, Sir Axel actually proposed that our army rush to their homes behind them, rape their wives, and kill their children. King Stannis, the people of Crab Island are not your traitors. Davos's words were rudely interrupted by Sir Axel. Count Celtigar's men were not completely wiped out on the Blackwater River. Hundreds of soldiers were captured and knelt together with their lord. Earl Davos asked, Count Celtigar is their lord, and they swear allegiance to him. What choice do they have? Sir Axel raised his thick chin and said in a contemptuous tone, Everyone has a choice. When Earl Celtigar surrenders, they can still refuse and die because of it. They die heroically. This is true loyalty. Lord Davos was unable to refute because he knew very well. Stannis is a man of pure iron who neither understands nor forgives the weakness of others. Sir Axel's voice was filled with mockery. As His Majesty's Prime Minister, you speak good words for those traitors. Now I have some doubts about your loyalty to His Majesty the King, Onion Knight." Stannis frowned and said, "Smuggler, it is everyone's duty to be loyal to the legitimate king, higher than loyalty to the Lord." Earl Davos opened his mouth and said, "King Stannis, people are different. Some are strong and some are weak." He gritted his teeth and said directly, "The law cannot condone weakness, but, at least, you should not implicate the innocent people. This is also a kind of cowardice." When Davos finished speaking, he heard Stannis grind his teeth. Sir Axel exclaimed angrily, "Davos Seaworth, how dare you insult His Majesty the King in person? You are a traitor." With a bang, he drew his sword from his waist. King Stannis's voice was cold. "Sir Axel, stand down." Sir Axel, not wanting to give up such a good opportunity, replied, "If our Majesty is happy." King Stannis interrupted, "I will be glad if you withdraw." He added, "Leave quickly and find Melisandre." Sir Axel had to relent. "As you command, your Majesty." He sheathed his sword, glared hatefully at Davos, and walked quickly toward the door, his boots thumping angrily on the stone slabs. After a long silence, Stannis said, "You always presume on my endurance." He warned his Onion Knight, "I can make your tongue as short as your fingers, smuggler." Davos bowed slightly, his voice very respectful. "King Stannis, I am yours, and my tongue is also yours at your disposal." King Stannis smiled faintly. "I will keep it to tell the truth, even though the truth is often very bitter." After a pause, he gestured for Davos to come closer and said, "The boy was sick, and Maester Pyros bled him." Earl Davos asked with some confusion, "Which boy?" Stannis replied in a calm tone, "The one who is sick is Robert's bastard son, the boy we brought from Storm's End." The boy Stannis referred to was Edric Storm, Robert Baratheon's son with Dorina Florent, conceived in the marriage bed of Stannis Baratheon and Selyse Florent. Stannis saw this as a stain on his reputation and sent him to Renly Baratheon's Storm's End. Since both Edric Storm's parents were nobles, his existence was recognized by Robert. Earl Davos nodded slightly. "I met him in Aegon's garden and had a few chats with him. Does that kid appeal to you?" King Stannis's eyes became deep. "He has this talent, the charm inherited from his father's blood. He knows he is the son of the king, but does not want to think about the identity of an illegitimate son. He is like a child. Renly adored Robert as much as he does. I remember that every time my brother visited Storm's End, he would play the role of a father and bring gifts such as swords, ponies, and fur cloaks, but Varys had prepared those things for him. The boy would write a letter full of gratitude to the Red Keep, and Robert laughed and asked the eunuch what he was planning to send this year. Renly didn't fare much better, leaving the task of raising his children to his acting castellan and maester. I don't have the hypocrisy of Robert and Renly." His teeth chattered. "But it pisses me off that everyone would think I was going to hurt that kid." He looked at the Onion Knight. "I chose Robert back then, didn't I? At that difficult moment, I chose family instead of honor." Davos was thinking, his god didn't even want to say Edric's name. This was indeed easy to cause misunderstandings and made him a little uneasy. He advised, "I hope little Edric can recover as soon as possible." King Stannis waved his hand, signaling Davos not to worry. "It's just a cold. He has a cough, a shiver, and a fever. Maester Pyros will cure him quickly. The child will be fine. You know, he has fluids in his body." After a pause, he added, "The king's blood contains power. She said so." She? It didn't take a guess to know that the woman King Stannis was talking about was Melisandre. Davos's eyes trembled slightly, and the uneasiness in his heart deepened. Davos couldn't help but ask, "Has Melisandre seen little Edric?" After a pause, Stannis's voice sounded, "It was also her wish to bring him to Dragonstone. She saw it from the holy fire. She told me that I need that boy." Frowning, Stannis seemed not to want to continue talking about the boy. He changed the subject. "My hand. I want to talk to you about our next steps." After a moment of silence, Davos cautiously added, "King Stannis, to be honest, we are unable to fight the Lannisters anymore. Maybe." At that moment, Melisandre's voice, tinged with an accent from the Jade Sea region, interrupted. "What your Majesty is referring to is a real war." Chapter 69, Leeches and Golden Roses. Melisandre's figure appeared at the door, draped in a red silk robe and holding a covered silver plate. Her steps were light as she spoke, Compared to the upcoming war, your so-called battle is just a child's play. Ancient gods, unknown to mortals, are gathering power, terrible, evil, and powerful. It's hard to compete. She placed the silver plate on the map table and continued. The cold wind has begun to blow, and soon there will be a long night that will never end. She looked at the Onion Knight, her eyes seemingly burning with flames. Unless the righteous have the courage to uphold the faith of the flaming red heart. Earl Davos raised an eyebrow and said, "So, our next battlefield is to spread your god, Lady Melisandre?" Hearing Davos's mocking words, Melisandre just smiled slightly and turned her gaze to King Stannis. Stannis stared at the silver plate on the map table and said, "She is telling the truth. She demonstrated it to me through the holy fire. I saw it with my own eyes." Count Davos's eyes trembled. He knew that his god would not panic like this. After a pause, he couldn't help but confirm. "King Stannis, did you see it?" Stannis nodded slightly and repeated, "I saw it with my own eyes." He looked at Count Davos, who appeared incredulous. "After the Battle of King's Landing, I fell into despair. Miss Melisandre asked me to stare at the fireplace. The airflow in the chimney was very strong, and bits of ashes were flying up. I stared at them and felt like a fool, but she made me look deeper, deeper. The dust was white, rising in the air, but in the blink of an eye, they seemed to be falling again." He seemed to relive the scene from that day. "That was snow." Then the sparks in the air formed a ring and turned into a circle of torches. I looked down at a high hill in the forest through the fire. His eyes grew even more intense. There were large groups of black figures moving in the snow behind the torch. Despite the heat of the flame, I still felt a strong chill that made me tremble. Then the scene disappeared, and the fire became a fire heap again. Finally, he added, "What I saw is true. I swear in the name of the king and the kingdom." The certainty in Stannis's words made Davos feel terrified. He murmured, "The hills in the forest, the figures in the snow, this. Melisandre said, "This means the real war has begun." Spreading her hands, she chanted in a low, hoarse voice, "The sands of the hourglass are flowing faster, and humanity is running out of time. We must act boldly, or all hope will be lost. Westeros must unite in the name of the only legitimate king, the prophesied prince, the Lord of Dragonstone, the chosen one of the Lord of Light." Stannis's brows knitted into knots. "The Lord of Light's choice is strange," he added. "Why me, and not my elder or younger brother? Renly and his peach. In my dream, juice dripped from the corners of his mouth and blood gushed from his throat. What if he had no control over his own? My brother is loyal and responsible, and we would have defeated Lord Tywin long ago. It would be a victory that even Robert would be proud of." "Robert," his jaw twitched, and he continued, "He also appeared in my dream. He laughed, had drinking competitions, boasted, and showed off. These are the things he is best at, yes, and fighting. I never outmatched him in any way." He raised his confusion again. "The Lord of Light should have chosen Robert. Why choose me?" Melisandre's hands were folded on her chest. She bowed slightly and replied, "Because of your integrity, your majesty the king." Integrity. Stannis touched the lid of the silver plate with a finger and said, "Leeches for an upright man?" Melisandre nodded slightly and said, "The king needs to save Westeros, but I must remind you again that this is not the right way." Stannis looked angry. "You said it would work." Melisandre shook her head. "Maybe, maybe not," Melisandre replied, her voice calm and unwavering. Stannis's anger flared. "Can it be done or not?" "Both are possible, your majesty," she answered. Stannis's teeth clenched in frustration. "Say something meaningful, woman." Melisandre's pale fingers gently brushed the cover on the silver plate. "The holy fire speaks clearly, and I speak clearly. There is truth in the flames, but the Lord of Light's will is not always easy to understand." She looked at Stannis, the large ruby at her throat seeming to sip the flickering light from the brazier. "Give me the boy. That's a surer, better way." She took a step closer to Stannis. "Give me the boy, and I will awaken the dragon from the stone for you, your majesty." Stannis's voice was cold. "I told you no." Melisandre spread her hands, her voice full of temptation. "He is just an illegitimate child, and what we want to save are all the men, women, and children in Westeros, plus the entire world, children who may be born in all countries." Stannis remained unmoved. "The boy is innocent." He is a disgrace to you, Melisandre reminded him. That boy has polluted your marriage bed. Otherwise, you would have had many sons, your majesty. Stannis's voice was icy. It was Robert who shamed me, not the child's fault. My daughter likes him very much. Besides, he is my blood relative. Yes, he has your brother's blood, Melisandre continued to persuade. That is the blood of the king. Only the blood of the king can awaken the dragon sleeping in the stone. Stannis's teeth creaked again. I won't listen to this again. The dragons have been extinct for a long time. The Targaryens tried to wake them up several times, but they either became clowns or took their own lives. On this deserted island abandoned by the gods, all we need is Patchface. He waved his hand dismissively. Just use leeches. Let's do it quickly. Melisandre lowered her head stiffly. I obey your majesty's instructions. She reached into her left sleeve with her right hand and sprinkled a handful of powder into the brazier. The next moment, the charcoal made a harsh sound, and pale flames rolled on it. Melisandre picked up the silver plate, brought it to Stannis, and opened the lid. Underneath were 3 large leeches swollen with blood. Count Davos's eyes trembled slightly. This was Edric's blood, the blood of the king. Stannis reached out a hand and squeezed a large leech. It twisted in his hand and tried to stick to his fingers. Melisandre reminded him, say names, 1 leech for each name. Joffrey Baratheon, Stannis said, throwing the leech into the fire, where it curled and burned like autumn leaves among the charcoal. Stannis grabbed a second leech. Balon Greyjoy. He threw the leech into the brazier. Its skin and flesh tore open, blood gushing out, hissing, and a puff of smoke rising. The last leech was held in Stannis's hand. He looked at it carefully for a while and said, Robb Stark. Stannis then threw it into the flames. The sky was blue and cloudless, like a huge sapphire. On a terrace of Highgarden Castle, a breeze blew, and the air was filled with the faint fragrance of roses and earth. Birds flew in the air, making crisp chirping sounds. Duke Mace Tyrell was reading a letter with a smile, stroking the triangular beard under his chin from time to time. The letter had been sent from the Eyrie last night. The Duke had already read it once, and today he read it for the second time. Putting down the letter, Duke Mace flashed a trace of regret and paused. He ordered a servant to bring a map of the 7 kingdoms and spread it on the table. Standing in front of the map, Duke Mace fixed his gaze on the location of Riverrun. After a while, a look of regret flashed across his face again. He murmured in a low voice, It's not appropriate to fight there. Duke Mace's eyes moved, and his sturdy fingers pointed at the location of Storm's End. He still wanted to prove his art of war to his vassals and the 7 kingdoms here. By the way, Duke Mael stroked his beard thoughtfully. He had long harbored ambitions to elevate his family's status, and now, with his daughter Margaery poised to become queen, the future seemed brighter than ever. If fortune favored him, his second son might even become the Duke of Storm's End. 2 dukes and a queen. Who would dare question the nobility of House Tyrell then? As he envisioned this promising future, Duke Mace's brow furrowed. He needed to strategize how to position Garland Tyrell as the Duke of Storm's End. The Lannisters would undoubtedly oppose this move. Unable to devise a plan on his own, he decided to consult Lady Olenna, his mother, for her wisdom. Father, Margaery Tyrell greeted, her voice as clear and sweet as a bell. Oh, our Queen Margaery, your beauty lights up this room, Duke Mace responded warmly. Margaery, dressed in a blue sleeveless gown, gave her father a gentle bow. Come quickly, my Margaery, he urged, his face beaming with pride. Have you seen Lady Olenna? They had arrived at Highgarden the previous evening, and while Duke Mace was eager to seek advice, Lady Olenna had disapproved of his sudden visit. Nonetheless, he had decided to rest first. Grandmother is having breakfast. We can wait for her here, father, Margaery said, her voice soothing. Duke Mace stroked his beard again, pondering. Well, Lady Olenna didn't say I couldn't find her, did she? Margaery smiled and shook her head slightly. Relieved, Duke Mace chuckled. That's good. We need to make arrangements as soon as possible. He paused, then added, There is only one queen in Highgarden. He looked at his daughter, who was soon to be the queen of the 7 kingdoms, the eternal light of Highgarden. Margaery's eyes glistened with emotion. She took her father's strong arm and leaned against him gently. Feeling her affection, Duke Mace's spirit soared. My Margery, don't worry. If the Lannisters don't cooperate, I will capture Riverrun and cut off the west from the Red Keep. Margaery's brown eyes flickered with thought. She glanced at a letter on the table. Father, do you plan to agree to Earl Greene's proposal to attack Riverrun together? Duke Mace's smile faltered slightly. He shook his head. It's not the right time, at least not now. He pointed to the Riverlands on the map. We have helped Duke Tywin defend King's Landing. This is the Lannisters' battlefield. There's no need for Tyrell's army to enter the Riverlands unless they actively request our support. He sighed, shaking his head. Duke Tywin is old. The western border of the Lannister family was almost overrun by a young wolf. Without our army, I doubt Tywin Lannister could have saved even his grandson, let alone the Iron Throne. Since the news of Stannis' defeat, Margaery had noticed a change in her father's demeanor, a sense of overconfidence. Normally, she would have praised him, knowing how much he enjoyed such flattery. Her father aspired to surpass Lord Tywin and become the foremost duke of the Seven Kingdoms. However, Margaery held back her praise, sensing something amiss. This subtle shift in her father's behavior worried her, though she couldn't pinpoint the exact cause. She hesitated, wondering if she should confide in her grandmother about her concerns. If Lady Olenna could discern it herself, that would be ideal. Margaery, ever curious, changed the subject naturally. Father, why would Earl Greene propose attacking Riverrun? The Vale is not peaceful. Does he have the strength for such an endeavor? Duke Mace paused, considering her words. This was something he hadn't fully thought through. Duke Mace's cheeks bulged as he frowned in contemplation. After a pause, he said, Greene's purpose may not be to send troops with us. He glanced away from the map. Could he have guessed the Tyrell family's next move? Is that possible? Margaery blinked and asked, Father, why do you think that? The Duke of Mace stroked his beard with a hint of pride. If Cersei Lannister leaves the Red Keep, no matter how many military exploits Greene has achieved, his family will still be excluded from the center of the Seven Kingdoms. Just like... He trailed off, recalling how his own Tyrell family had been unable to enter the kingdom's center since the war 16 years ago. He felt no need to voice the pain they had endured. After a moment, he continued, As the head of a family, how can a knight's loyalty surpass the family's interests? With conviction, he concluded, Greene must be doing this for you, my Margaery. Margaery's face still showed some doubt, but deep down she felt a flicker of understanding. In the past, when her father faced important matters, he rarely expressed a clear opinion, often relying on her grandmother's help from behind the scenes. Normally, even with such analysis, her father would not easily confirm his opinion, except in matters of warfare. Recently, however, her father had become more confident. While the Golden Rose had always hoped for such a Duke of Highgarden, this newfound confidence made her inexplicably uneasy. The Duke of Mace looked at the sky and said, Margaery, it's almost time. Let's go. Chapter 270, Attack of the Golden Rose. The corridor of Highgarden Castle was adorned with exquisite paintings depicting historical stories, legends, and natural scenery, creating a mesmerizing visual experience. On the opposite side, a row of narrow windows, inlaid with stained glass, allowed sunlight to filter through, casting colorful light and shadows. The floor was covered with a thick carpet featuring intricate patterns, soft and comfortable underfoot. The Duke of Metz and Margaery walked slowly through the corridor. Noticing his daughter's occasional distraction, the Duke asked with concern, My Margaery, you seem troubled. Margaery blinked, paused, and looked at her father. Father, I am thinking about King Joffrey and Earl Greene. The Duke of Metz was a little surprised. Why are you thinking of them? What are your thoughts? Margaery replied softly, Father, do you remember Earl Greene's evaluation of King Joffrey during the dinner at the Long Table Hall? The Duke of Metz recalled it and said uncertainly, Little boy? Margaery reminded him, Decisive little boy. Yes, right. The Duke of Metz remembered, and then asked doubtfully, Is there anything wrong with that evaluation? Joffrey is only 13 years old. Of course, he is a little boy. Decisive. As the king of the Seven Kingdoms, he needs to be decisive. Margaery's eyes moved slightly. Father, Earl Greene respects you. Hearing this, the Duke of Metz stroked his beard proudly. Margaery continued, Therefore, I believe that Earl Greene would not hide anything from you, especially something related to the future of the Tyrell family. The Duke of Metz looked at his daughter. Margaery, is Greene hinting at something to me? Margaery nodded slightly. Based on the recently discovered information, Earl Greene is hinting that decisive means not listening to other people's advice. Little boys are willful. She looked at her father. Combined, King Joffrey is an uncontrollable king. This reminds me of Aerys II, the Mad King. After a moment of silence, the Duke of Metz suddenly stopped. He lost his smile and said, Margaery, Joffrey is still a child. I believe you can assist him with your wisdom. He added, you must remember that you are the Rose of Highgarden, and Joffrey and your children will become the heirs to the Iron Throne. This is the most important thing. Margaery's eyes trembled slightly. She paused, then a relaxed smile appeared on her beautiful face. I understand, father. Please don't worry. The Duke of Metz then showed a look of relief. Oh, my Margaery, my daughter, no one can refuse your beauty, no one can help but love you. He patted his daughter. Don't think too much. Behind you are the golden roses of Highgarden. Let's go, my Margaery. The oak door of the small hall was pushed open, and the hearty voice of the Duke of Metz sounded. Oh, Lady Olenna, my mother, did you enjoy your breakfast? Although there was a report from the waiter, the Duke of Metz's voice came suddenly, causing the teacup in Lady Olenna's hand to shake. It's unpleasant now, Lady Olenna said, placing the teacup on the small round table. The Duke of Metz laughed, but Lady Olenna ignored her son. She said kindly to Margaery, who appeared slowly, My dear, come and sit next to Grandma. Without his mother's greeting, the Duke of Metz happily sat on the other side and motioned to the waiter to pour wine. Olenna Redwine's cheeks were thin and wrinkled with age, but her eyes, deeply set in their sockets, were still bright and energetic, as if she could see through everything. She looked at her granddaughter sitting next to her. My Margaery, your face looks not good? Before Margaery could reply, the Duke of Metz spoke first. Mother, it's nothing. Margaery is just nervous before the marriage. Lady Olenna looked at her son, who liked to think he was clever, and sighed. Olenna wanted to hit that big fat head hard with a wooden spoon. She calmed her anger and said, Our Duke of Highgarden, do you regard the light of Highgarden as an ordinary little girl? Seeing that Lady Olenna was showing signs of getting angry, Duke Mace immediately put on a flattering smile. It was my carelessness. Mother, in my heart, Margaery will always be a little girl who will never grow up. Margaery looked at her father, who was completely suppressed by her grandmother. Her eyebrows curved, and she showed a genuinely relaxed smile. Lady Olenna didn't want to be angry anymore. She felt like the biggest fool in the Reach when she got angry with her stupid son. She first glanced at the boar duke with disgust, then looked at Margaery. Seeing that her granddaughter seemed to be in a happy mood, she smiled kindly. Lady Olenna patted the back of Margaery's white hand with her wrinkled one and said, Old woman, send the wild boar duke away first, and we will talk later. After saying that, Lady Olenna looked at Duke Mace again. You came from the long table hall to find me, an old woman, but what are your orders? She added, Old lady, I feel deeply honored to be remembered by the majestic Duke of Highgarden. The Duke of Mace didn't seem to hear the sarcasm in his mother's words at all. He smiled and said, I need to use your wisdom, Lady Olenna. After a pause, he added, I'm also a little anxious. After a moment of silence, Lady Olenna said, Let me listen. Duke Mace stroked his beard and said slowly, It's about Queen Cersei of the Lannister family. I heard that she is hostile to our Margaery. This is not a good thing. Moreover, the Queen Mother has lost her husband. A woman, not the previous queen. I think the Red Keep only needs one mistress. Lady Olenna's eyes were a little suspicious. It's rare that you can consider this. Although this matter was only thought of by the Duke of Mace after Margaery's reminder, he couldn't help but look proud in the face of his mother's rare praise. After being happy for a while, he finally came to his senses and suddenly said, Lady Olenna, have you prepared a plan? Seeing the various reactions of the Duke of Mace, Lady Olenna couldn't help but snort coldly and said, Waiting for your hindsight, will my granddaughter be able to wear the queen's crown smoothly? After mocking, she continued, According to the agreement of the alliance, a woman from the Lannister family will marry into Highgarden. Let Tywin marry Cersei here, and let her marry Willis, the heir and Duke of Mace's eldest son, to bear children. After Lady Olenna finished speaking, Margaery's eyes trembled slightly, and Duke Mace paused while stroking his beard, as if he was frozen there. After a few seconds of silence, the Duke of Mace said incredulously, "Willis is my heir, and Cersei is just." Lady Olenna interrupted coldly, "That widow can give birth to a grandson with Tyrell and Lannister blood for your boar duke." The Duke of Mace opened his mouth, and after a while, he continued stroking his beard, with a smile on his face. Okay, this is a good idea." The Duke of Mace was thinking, if Cersei gives birth to Willis's child, the Golden Rose will take root and bloom on the Iron Throne. From now on, in the future, it is even possible. Wipe your saliva, Duke of Highgarden. Lady Olenna's voice pulled Duke Mace out of his wonderful thoughts. He happily leaned on the back of the chair and said, "Lady Olenna, please give me your instructions." Olenna glanced at her son with disgust and said, "You should set off as soon as possible, and you can discuss this matter with Lord Tywin yourself." The Duke of Mace nodded first, thought for a moment, and then suddenly asked, "What if I go to King's Landing now? What will happen to Margaery? I have to personally escort my Margaery from Highgarden to King's Landing." "This matter can be left to Garland, the second son of the Duke of Mace, except for the marriage of that woman Cersei." Lady Olenna stared at Duke Metz and said, "You have another important task." Under the doubtful gaze of Duke Metz, she continued, "The people of King's Landing, who have just finished the battle, must be very hungry, or they may not have eaten for a long time. As the Duke of Highgarden, I have arranged for bread to be prepared. Distribute it in Margaery's name to all the people of King's Landing, every day until their queen arrives in King's Landing." She patted her granddaughter's hand. "My granddaughter will enter the Red Keep with cheers and flowers, and the whole of King's Landing will celebrate the name of Margaery Tyrell." When the Duke of Metz left in a hurry, Lady Olenna signaled the maids to leave, leaving only her and her granddaughter in the small hall. Lady Olenna's eyes were full of kindness. "Margaery, are you worried about your father?" Margaery looked at her grandmother, nodded slightly, and said, "This feeling is very strange. I don't even know the specific reason." Lady Olenna stretched out her hand to caress Margaery's cheek and murmured, "When I was your age, I was a carefree Miss Redwine. After I got married, I could only care about the bed. Happy, but you can't enjoy that kind of beauty." Margaery couldn't help but chuckle. She shook her head slightly and said, "Grandma, you taught me how to choose. I know what to do. Only through experience can you truly understand how to take and give up." Lady Olenna stood up tremblingly and continued, "When I think about going to King's Landing, where you can smell shit from more than 10 miles away, I can't cheer up. Come, my Margaery, come with me. Let's walk around the garden." The sky was blue, and the trees were green. Margaery walked on the green lawn with Lady Olenna on her arm. Roses of various colors were blooming on one side, like a sea of flowers. Not far away there was an exquisite fountain. Water gushed out from the mouth of the sculpture, forming a beautiful arc. Lady Olenna said, "Margaery, my son is very greedy. I saw it when he was very young." Margaery said softly, "Grandma, you taught me that there is no person in this world who is not greedy." Lady Olenna nodded and said, "That's true. I am also very greedy. I often fantasize about going back to my youth and riding horses with handsome young knights." She looked at Margaery. "But I know this is impossible. I know how big my belly is. That is a normal desire, and that is not greed." There was a bit of anger in her voice. "But your father is different. When he sees delicious food, he just wants to eat it, regardless of whether he can or not. Life goes on forever." After muttering, Lady Olenna said angrily, "This is the most boring clan motto I have ever heard." Margaery pursed her lips and smiled. "Grandma, because of you, the Golden Rose will never wither." Lady Olenna's anger continued. "My idiot husband left me a ridiculous death, an idiot son, and the mess of the Tyrell family. May the gods send him to the 7 hells." Margaery could only pray silently for her grandfather in her heart. She stopped talking, and little Rose was now her grandmother's most well-behaved listener. After scolding her husband and son for a while, Lady Olenna's anger seemed to finally dissipate. Stannis lost, so the stupid Duke of Highgarden became the stupid and arrogant Duke of Highgarden. This is the reason for your inner uneasiness, my Margery. I'm tired. Let's find a place to sit. After they sat down on the wooden chairs in the pavilion, Lady Olenna added, "When my arrogant son goes to King's Landing, the old lion of the West will make the inflated Highgarden fish shrink back to its original size." Margery helped her grandmother with the hem of her skirt, sat down and said, "Grandma, after the Battle of King's Landing, Duke Tywin's reputation has become even more prestigious. Maybe he will become the Prime Minister forever." "Margery, the answer to this question will be known when we get to King's Landing." Lady Olenna's eyes were deep. "I don't like the Lannisters. I don't trust them, but we must play the game wisely." Lady Olenna's eyes narrowed slightly as she spoke. "Trust them? I haven't forgotten the pain of losing my grandson." Margery's beautiful eyes widened slightly. In response, Lady Olenna turned to her granddaughter. "Do you remember that night at Bitterbridge? The old woman said she would teach you the final lesson, chapter 196. You are about to wear the crown of the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Now, it's time." She reached out and held one of Margery's hands. "Men have their battlefields, and women have theirs. Men are used to wielding swords, but women can use other means, and their effects can be just as powerful. You will be the one and only queen, my Margery." Under the witness of all the nobles in the Vale, Greene Kleb personally knighted Rena and others in the Eyrie. After the ceremony, Russell Brunn, the new knight of the Crabclaw Peninsula, chapter 239, was appointed by Greene as the Knight of the Bloody Gate. The guards of the Bloody Gate were all replaced by Kleb's blue robes. The next day, Greene led an army composed of more than 1,000 blue robes and nearly 2,000 mercenaries northward. Their destination was Heart City, located to the north of the Eyrie. 3 days later, more than 3,000 soldiers from the Thorn Regiment, led by Amparo, joined Greene's forces. In the camp, Greene's voice rang out, "Amparo, when we get near Heart City, more than 500 mercenaries will join us." He pointed to Heart City on the map. "The mercenaries' mission is to attack the city. This is what I negotiated with the Golden Dragon." Chapter 271, Lannister Brothers. Greene slowly scanned the northern part of the valley on the map. "The population of the Crabclaw Peninsula is limited, and our soldiers cannot withstand the consumption of siege warfare," he said. "Amparo, the mission of the Thorn Corps is to let those mercenaries do their best." Amparo Thorns nodded seriously. "Sir, I will take good care of them." Greene turned his head to look at Amparo and raised the corner of his mouth slightly. "Well, I'm done." The old knights in the valley were exhausted by Kleb. The main obstacle to the subsequent advance in the northern region was the castle built in a dangerous place. After the war, the question of governance in the valley arose. Governance requires patience, but legal authority needs to be established as soon as possible. Greene pointed his finger at King's Landing on the map. The valley was not the Crabclaw Peninsula. If he went to the Red Keep, Dany would need to be in charge of the Eagle's Nest, and only she could do that. Although the population of Crabclaw Peninsula is small, the Blood Gate, Gate of the Moon, and Eagle's Nest City need to relocate some people from Crabclaw Peninsula. The military and political value here is too important, and Seagulltown must have a firm grip. Greene pinched his chin. The direct territory of the Eyrie City must first promote the farm based on Kleb's law. Dany is a novice in politics, after all. Will she be under too much pressure? It seems it has to be combined with the micromanagement of the Crow King Greene. Also, increase the number of people migrating from the Crabclaw Peninsula to reduce the difficulty of Dany's governance in the valley. As he thought about it, Lord Greene's mind wandered a little, and he thought about the problem of more women than men in the Crabclaw Peninsula. Maybe land rewards could be used to tempt strong men to marry spearwives from the Crabclaw Peninsula. If it is implemented, it must be carefully arranged, and this matter cannot conflict with military merit. It's not easy to be a ruler, and it's even harder to be the ruler of a large territory. He missed the time in Whispering City a little bit. Seeing that the Lord seemed to be deep in thought, Amparo stood aside silently and did not disturb him. The tent was silent for a while. Not long after, Greene withdrew his thoughts and continued to arrange military affairs with Amparo. "Leave these places to Sir Pell. I have transferred enough soldiers, horses, and mercenaries to him, Greene said. To the east. Is our next destination the Longbow Hall, my lord? Amparo asked. Well, I heard, Greene began, but was interrupted by the voice of a messenger from the camp entrance. Lord Greene, a letter from Mermaid Port. Mermaid Harbor? Greene raised his eyebrows slightly and took the letter. He glanced at the seal, then opened it and read it. Greene's eyes trembled slightly. One of Stannis's fleets violated their neutrality agreement and actively invaded Kleb's territory. His fingers tapped the armrests of the chair one by one. Melisandre, the wall, needs support, Greene muttered. He looked at Amparo. In the next battle, if the rebels lay down their weapons, we can give them the opportunity to put on black clothes, sir. 2 days later, Lucas Corbray of Hart City, brother of Lord Leonor Corbray, died in Chapter 247, and Sir Lynn Corbray, died in Chapter 220, expressed his determination to fight to the death. Then, the Valley mercenaries hired by Kleb launched an attack on Ansu City. Although there were less than 200 defenders in the city, they held on for 3 full days before the city was breached. The casualties of the mercenaries who attacked the city reached nearly 1,000. Lucas of the Corbray family was killed in battle. After this battle, the historic Corbray family was declared extinct. Lord Greene had to incorporate Antarctica into the direct territory of the Aerie city and selected a 3 centurion to join the Kleb Legion. Chapter 101, The March Eastward. Greene, now the garrison captain of Ansu City, led his troops eastward after a brief reorganization. His next target was Longbow Hall, where only the old and weak members of the Hunter family remained. During the march, the head of the Malcor family from Old Anchorage, a coastal city east of Iron Oak City and south of Longbow Hall, approached Greene with his heir and 3 daughters to swear allegiance. Consequently, the Malcor troops joined Greene's army in the conquest of Longbow Hall. Around the same time, another regiment led by Kleb's retainer knight, Per Pili, captured Hongay City, located northwest of Eagle's Nest City. Their next targets were the last 2 important cities in the northern part of the valley, Snakewood City and Coldwater City. Chapter 102, The West Pier of Seagull Town. At the West Pier of Seagull Town, Lake Snow walked with his men aboard a 300-row battleship. This massive ship, purchased by Greene and Braavos through the Iron Bank, was the first of 9 battleships and would become the flagship of Kleb's fleet. Although Lake preferred the sea, he envied the military exploits achieved by Kleb's soldiers in the Battle of the Valley. After meeting Big Baby, Lake's mood improved significantly. He could already imagine the majestic appearance of the ship navigating through wind and waves, and couldn't wait to try it out. Once the sailors were in place, Lake shouted from the bridge, "Get ready to set sail." Chapter 103, The Dungeons of Riverrun. In the Dungeons of Riverrun, Jaime Lannister sat on the ground with his legs stretched out, leaning against the wall with his eyes closed. His once bright blonde hair was now dirty and greasy, covering his forehead. His handsome face had become pale and thin, covered with stubble. His strong body had weakened, and his once gorgeous clothes were now tattered and stained. The cell was filled with an unpleasant smell, and Jaime's high-spirited image was gone. "Hey, tall and mighty brother, it looks like you're doing well," Tyrion's voice sounded outside the iron gate. Hearing the sound, Jaime, who had been asleep, suddenly opened his eyes. He looked for a moment and then said, "Tyrion?" Tyrion grinned through the iron bars. "Sir Jaime, you are not dreaming. What you see is indeed the Lannister giant, your favorite lion brother." The iron chains nailed to the wall and connected to Jaime's hands and feet shook as he spoke in disbelief. "When did you arrive? It's very dangerous here. Why did you come?" Tyrion let out a long, alcohol-laden burp. Leaning against the iron fence with his head slightly tilted, he said, "Don't worry, I will answer them one by one, my brother. I've been here for several days, 5 or 7. I've been busy trying to please Lord Edmure of Riverrun. When I thought my tongue was about to break, he finally agreed to my request to meet you." He grinned. "I took in dozens of homeless girls on the road. They are very popular in Riverrun. Maybe I relied on their hard work to get this opportunity. Lord Edmure also likes them very much. Although he tries to hide it, I can see it. Well, we both have the same hobbies. I'm just more direct. As for why I came, Tyrion scratched his cheek with a finger. "This is Lord Tywin's order. He commanded me to negotiate with Little Runwolf about your ransom. Also, I was forced to be kind. My father put his sword to my neck, so I came willingly." Ser Jaime couldn't help but laugh. "Thank you for coming, Tyrion." Tyrion smiled. "I heard about you from Edmure, and it was because my plan was not thorough enough that I let you end up here." He looked around the dirty cell and continued, "Well, the environment here is not bad. Lord Edmure is a good man. I love him to death, my brother." Ser Jaime shook his head and said, "Tyrion, thank you. I only hope that you can completely forget how I look now." Tyrion chuckled. "When you can't remember, I won't forget to remind you that I am a good brother, Brother Jaime." Looking left and right, Tyrion lowered his voice slightly. "The boy who calls the shots here is the one who claims to be the King of the North. I've inquired, and he will arrive at Riverrun soon. You still need to stay for a few days." After glancing around again, he continued, "Edmure Tully has promised me to improve your treatment. Jaime, you must take this opportunity to take good care of yourself. We must prepare for the worst." Ser Jaime nodded silently at first, then said, "Tyrion, don't take risks. I would rather be locked up here than see anything happen to you because of me." After a pause, he added seriously, "Promise me, Tyrion, my brother." Tyrion waved his hand dismissively. "Don't worry, I am a Lannister with a heart as cold as winter. Just wait for my good news." Jaime smiled and shook his head. Just as he was about to speak, there were thumping footsteps approaching. "I heard that Lord Hoster Tully is dying. Get well," Tyrion finished quickly and took a step forward. As he walked away, he said loudly, "Jaime Lannister, stay well. I will ransom you with King Robb as soon as possible." After Tyrion's figure disappeared, Ser Jaime leaned against the wall, still able to vaguely hear the voices of Tyrion and others. The sun outside the dungeon was dazzling. Tyrion, with a pair of thick dark circles under his eyes, asked, "Lord Edmure, you mean His Majesty Robb will enter Riverrun soon?" Edmure Tully, looking haggard, shrugged. "The news just came that my nephew is already near Riverrun." Tyrion rolled his eyes slightly. "It's a bit sudden, but it's good news for me and a surprise for you." Edmure hesitated for a moment. "Lord Tyrion, I don't want Robb to know that I allowed you to meet Ser Jaime privately. I hope this remains a secret." Tyrion did not ask the reason. He sincerely promised, "Of course, this is just a small matter. I can't thank you enough. A Lannister always pays his debts." Chapter 272, Copper and Black Iron Sword Crown. Hearing Tyrion's assurance, Edmure Tully tapped his chin thoughtfully. Tyrion blew a long whistle and said lazily, "I almost stayed up all night. Myr's legs are really... I can't stop, even if I want to." He grinned with a lewd smile on his face. "Continue in the evening?" Edmure wanted to agree immediately, but he knew he couldn't leave tonight's banquet early. In fact, he could have some fun quietly during the banquet, and others would just treat it as entertainment. But others could, and he couldn't, because he was the heir to the Duke of Riverrun. Everyone was staring at him. Edmure suddenly felt an inexplicable emotion in his heart. As the heir to the Duke of Riverrun, he could only sneak out of the city to have fun like a thief after the sun set. Who understood this pain? To be honest, Edmure didn't like the Lannister dwarf when he first met him, and felt that even talking to him was an insult. But after a little contact, Edmure had to admit that Tyrion was not bad. He was very good at playing, and also taught him a lot of new things. The most important thing was that he could stay in the inn chartered by Tyrion in Riverrun in the name of entertaining the envoys from the Red Keep. Thinking of the interesting things in the past few days, Edmure once again lamented that Tyrion was really good at playing, and it was a shame to meet him so late. Tyrion would not stay in Riverrun for long, so he must cherish it. Edmure Tully nodded slightly, trying to appear reserved, and then left with his chin held high. Tyrion looked at Edmure's hurried back and smiled happily. When Edmure looked at the beauties he had brought to Riverrun, Tyrion could see that this was a big boy who had been repressed for a long time. And of course, he was prescribing the right medicine. After many contacts, Tyrion also found that Edmure himself was a kind-hearted person. If there was no chaos among the kings, he would definitely be Joffrey's well-behaved Duke of Riverrun in the future. As both heirs, Jaime was much luckier than Edmure. Although Lord Tywin was strict, He was indeed very tolerant of him. Tyrion raised his eyes and looked at the blue sky. Maybe when Jaime put on his white robe, although Duke Tywin did not express it specifically, he already knew in his heart that Jaime had given up his identity as the heir to Casterly Rock. Tyrion felt that he had given a satisfactory answer when he performed the duties of Prime Minister on behalf of his father. Surrounded by powerful enemies, he preserved the Iron Throne and the glory of the Lannister family and saved hundreds of thousands of people in King's Landing. Tyrion felt that he was now qualified to sit across from Lord Tywin and talk. Tyrion took steps forward with his little hands behind his back and hummed a tune happily. At the gate of Riverrun, Robb Stark sat on a tall horse with a black and smooth mane, and Edmure stood respectfully in front of the crowd. King Robb shouted, "Lord Edmure, our kingdom will never forget the warriors who sacrificed their lives bravely in the Battle of the Red Fork. It is because of the power of the North and Riverrun they showed that Tywin Lannister was so frustrated that he had to turn back to Stannis." The crowd burst into laughter and agreement, and Edmure himself, who tried his best to maintain a humble manner, couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. Robb raised his hand to signal everyone to be quiet and then said, "But we cannot let down our guard. The Lannisters will definitely attack again. For the peace of the kingdom, we must continue to fight. Long live the king in the north. Long live the king of the Trident." Amid the cheers of the crowd, King Robb entered Riverrun, surrounded by his vassals from the north and the Riverlands. When they were about to arrive at the main castle of Riverrun, Roose Bolton from the Dreadfort suddenly came on horseback and blocked King Robb's path. The surroundings became silent for a moment because Earl Roose Bolton sat atop his horse, saluting with a hand to his chest. "Your Majesty the King, I am here on the orders of Lord Eddard," he announced. Before Robb could respond, Great John Umber, standing nearby, shouted angrily, "Roose Bolton, get out of the way! You're blocking King Robb's path." King Robb raised a hand to stop Great John from continuing. He turned his gaze to the Earl of the Dreadfort, who stood as still and cold as an ice sculpture. "Earl Bolton, how is my father?" Robb asked. Roose Bolton's thin voice replied, "Although Lord Eddard has regained control of Moat Cailin, Greyjoy's Ironborn continue to raid across the north. He remains in Winterfell, mobilizing the few remaining troops to protect our home." A murmur of unease spread among the northern lords at Bolton's words. 10 Balon Greyjoys are no match for my father," King Robb declared, staring intently at Roose Bolton. "I will summon you shortly, Roose Bolton." Roose Bolton nodded slightly, then lightly kicked his horse's belly, pulling the reins to move out of the way. In the small hall of the main castle, Robb Stark stared into the flames of the fireplace. "Uncle, I can't read Earl Bolton's heart. I can't trust him," he confessed. Brynden Tully quipped, "No one can see through an ice cube." King Robb smiled but remained silent for a moment. "My father trusts him very much," he finally said. Sir Brynden shook his head slightly. "Ned has his preferences, but he trusts all his northern vassals." King Robb nodded thoughtfully. "Why did my father send Count Bolton here? Most of the northern lords dislike the Dreadfort, and my father knows this well." Sir Brynden pondered for a moment. Perhaps Ned values Earl Bolton's wisdom. He understands the North. When the descendants of the North's ancestors hold swords, they rarely consider other things. King Robb couldn't help but smile. "That's one reason they don't like Earl Bolton." Sir Brynden smiled kindly. "Perhaps your father hopes you will make a choice soon. With Earl Bolton here, you can at least hear different advice." After a moment of silence, King Robb asked, "Choice?" Sir Brynden stared at King Robb for a while, then pointed at the bronze and black iron crown the king wore. "My child, have you thought about how to meet your father?" King Robb leaned back in his chair, answering without hesitation. "When the time comes, my father will be the king of the North and the king of the Trident." Sir Brynden asked, "What if your father refuses to wear the king's crown?" King Robb opened his mouth but then closed it, thinking, "The Lannisters almost killed my father. We are already mortal enemies. The Stark family has no other choice." Sir Brynden sighed. "Ned and Robert are brothers. Your father will not seize the Iron Throne left by his brother." Seeing Robb's silence, he added, "While you were bathing, I inquired about Lord Bolton. It is said that Lord Walder refused to let the Dreadfort troops pass through the Twins. He could only come with some guards. After a pause, he continued. Marquis Walder is expressing his dissatisfaction with the matter of Jane. He is reminding you that the twins of the Frey family are very important, and he is waiting for your friendly response, King Robb. Sir Brynden saw Robb's clenched fists and said slowly, "Before you call Edmure, King Robb." A pair of deep blue eyes looked straight at Robb. "Are you sure you want to cancel your engagement with the Freys and take Jane Westerling as your wife?" King Robb nodded slowly. "Jane and I will hold our wedding in Riverrun, Sir Brynden." Although he already knew the answer, Sir Brynden sighed inwardly. "Your Majesty," Edmure Tully greeted, saluting before sitting next to Sir Brynden. "Uncle, I have news from the Red Fork." He began excitedly. Edmure, reeking of alcohol, boasted about his military exploits to his uncle like a child. At King Robb's signal, after all the servants had left the hall, Sir Brynden frowned and said, "Enough, Edmure. We've heard enough of your boasting." Edmure, taken aback, asked, "What boast, uncle?" Sir Brynden looked at his nephew sternly. "You should be thanking King Robb for his tolerance. He acted for you at the city gate to prevent you from embarrassing yourself in front of your own vassals. If it were up to me, I would have scolded you mercilessly for your foolishness, not praised you for your so-called achievements." Edmure, incredulous, retorted, "In the battle at the Red Fork Crossing, countless warriors sacrificed their lives to repel the Lannisters. You should respect them, uncle." He then turned to King Robb, anger in his voice. "What, is no one allowed to win except the young wolf? Did I steal your glory, Robb?" Robb removed his crown, placing it on the table beside him, and corrected him coldly. "It's your Majesty, uncle." Edmure turned away angrily, refusing to look at either his nephew or his uncle. After a pause, Sir Brynden's rich, hoarse voice filled the room. "Edmure, I heard that King Robb gave you an order to stay at Riverrun, and that's all." Edmure turned back, trying to explain. "Uncle, I defended Riverrun and repelled Lord Tywin's army." Robb interrupted, his expression darkening. "Repelling them does not equate to victory, Lord Edmure. Have you ever considered why the coalition forces from the north and the Riverlands stayed in the west for so long? You know I don't have enough troops to break Lannisport or Casterly Rock." "Why?" Edmure was stunned. He tried to guess the answer. "For other castles? For gold? For cattle and sheep? Is it for beauty?" Robb's face darkened further. "Do you think we went to the west to become bandits?" After a moment he continued, "Uncle, I stayed in the west to lure Duke Tywin over." Sir Brynden explained to the still puzzled Edmure. The main force King Robb brought to the west was cavalry, while the Lannister army was mostly infantry. His original plan was for Duke Tywin to chase him to the seaside in the west. Then, using the speed of the cavalry, slip past, cross the Golden Road, and occupy a defensive position with favorable terrain. Launching an attack there would force the Lannisters to pay a heavy price. If Lord Tywin did not attack, he would be trapped in the Westerlands, consuming their resources instead of plundering the Riverlands. King Robb nodded. At the same time, Stannis would directly attack the isolated King's Landing, but Lannister's return aid caused him to be defeated at King's Landing. "Duke Tywin's only enemies are us, uncle." Edmure finally understood. He looked at his uncle, then at his nephew, and finally weakly defended himself. "I never heard of this plan." King Robb, tired, said, "I asked you to guard Riverrun." "What part of that order did you not understand, Lord Edmure?" Sir Brynden shook his head. "Edmure, you stopped Duke Tywin at the Red Fork River and held it long enough for the Lannister and Tyrell armies to join forces and attack Stannis from behind when the time was right." Edmure, exhausted, murmured, "I really didn't expect. I didn't want to at all." Suddenly raising his voice, he said hastily, "Robb, trust me, I will make it up to you. Next time there is a war, I will be your vanguard." "Is this compensation?" Sir Brynden reminded him. "It is an honor to be named vanguard, my nephew." When Edmure didn't know what to say, King Robb stared at the crown on the table and said, "Uncle Edmure, the next war will come soon. After Joffrey's marriage to the Tyrell family, the Lannisters will go to war again. I have no doubt about it. This time, we must be prepared. They have the support of the Tyrells. Maybe I will also have to deal with the Freys." Hearing that Robb was going to confront the Frey family, Edmure was taken aback and exclaimed, "How can the Fry family be our enemy? You are engaged to one of them. Have you forgotten?" After a brief pause, King Rob replied, "I will marry Lady Jane of the Westerling family, uncle." Edmure's eyes widened in shock, and he blurted out, "Westerling? That insignificant settlement in the west? Are you serious?" He paused, thinking it over, and convinced himself that Rob must be joking. "Ha ha!" Edmure laughed, though it wasn't particularly funny. It was rare for his usually serious nephew to make a joke, and as an uncle, he was eager to join in. However, under the scrutinizing gaze of his nephew, he suppressed his laughter awkwardly. "Isn't it a joke?" Edmure asked tentatively. When he saw Rob nod, Edmure looked at him in disbelief. "Rob, are you really going to break your engagement? This is breaking an oath." Sir Brynden patted Edmure on the shoulder, urging him to be quiet. "We will discuss the reasons for this later. First, let's talk about how to compensate Lord Fry. This is very important." Edmure, still puzzled, responded, "Uncle, don't joke about this. Old Frey is notoriously stingy. How can we possibly compensate him for this?" Chapter 273, Etiquette and Alliances. As the heir of Riverrun, Edmure Tully prided himself on his decorum. However, upon hearing his uncle's suggestion, he nearly leaped from his seat in shock. His voice was filled with disbelief. "What? You want me to marry one of the Frey daughters?" Seeing his uncle's serious expression, Edmure shook his head firmly. "No, the Frey family will turn my children into, well, less than desirable. Uncle, if my children inherit the looks of the Frys, the Tully family will be mocked for generations. My poor child will be ridiculed, and she will blame me. The Tully name will be tarnished. Gods, please forgive me." Brynden Tully remained silent, while Robb Stark looked on, equally speechless. Edmure's voice grew more impassioned. "Uncle, why are you looking at me like that? Are my concerns not valid? This is crucial." Sir Brynden regarded his nephew with a complex expression. "Your concerns are not entirely unfounded, but if we lose to the Lannisters, the Tully family will have no future. Edmure, securing the twins is vital for our next move in the war." Edmure understood the strategic importance of the twins, but the thought of marrying into the Fry family was unbearable. After a moment of contemplation, he proposed, "Uncle, perhaps I could marry a princess from Dorne. Prince Martell despises the Lannisters." The more he spoke, the more convinced he became of his idea. "If we can ally with Dorne, the Frys will be irrelevant." Sir Bryndon's eyes narrowed slightly. "Edmure, Dorne is far away. Right now, the Frys control the twins, which can divide our forces and our kingdom." Edmure fell silent, considering his uncle's words. He then turned to Robb Stark. "Your Majesty, I think you should." King Robb raised his hand, stopping Edmure mid-sentence. After a moment of thought, he said, "Lord Edmure, if you agree to marry a Frey, I promise that the son of Jane and I will marry your daughter with Miss Frey. This alliance is crucial if we are to defeat the Lannisters. Your child with Miss Frey will have my full support, whether they marry or are married off. This is my solemn vow, witnessed by the old and new gods." Edmure was taken aback. He leaned back in his chair, looking defeated. "Uncle, will my father agree to this?" Sir Brynden patted his nephew's arm reassuringly. "Leave the rest to me. The Duke of Riverrun will make the wise choice, and not all the Frey ladies are as you fear. I will personally negotiate with Lord Frey. Don't worry too much." Edmure finally nodded, resigned. "Uncle, my standards are not high. As long as she isn't too unattractive, I'll be content. Of course, the more beautiful the better, for the future of the Tully family." Sir Brynden smiled kindly. "Don't worry, I don't want your daughter to have any complaints." Edmure smiled back at his uncle, a rare moment of levity, but he quickly composed himself, wanting to maintain a dignified image in front of King Robb. He coughed lightly and said seriously, "King Robb, I am at your service." King Robb's voice was filled with gratitude. "Uncle, thank you. The North will never forget your sacrifice." Hearing his nephew's thanks, Edmure couldn't help but smile. He waved his hand dismissively. "Trout and Stark, we stand together. Running Wolf is a family. My sister will be overjoyed when she hears this. I think she'll spend the entire day in the sanctuary, thanking the gods." After a pause, Edmure leaned towards Sir Brynden, still a bit worried, and whispered, "Uncle, I prefer a petite wife." Sir Brynden glanced at Edmure, who was of medium stature, and nodded kindly. As they discussed the upcoming war, The voice of the royal steward interrupted them. "Your Majesty, Maester Wayman from Riverrun, wishes to see you. Invite him in." The old Maester Wayman, slightly hunched over, walked slowly towards King Robb, saluted tremblingly, and handed over a letter. "Your Majesty, a lot has happened in the valley. This is the information obtained by the Riverland merchants in King's Landing." After reading the letter, King Robb frowned and thought for a moment before handing it to Sir Brynden. Sir Bryndon's expression turned somber as he read it, then passed the letter to Edmure, who was waiting nearby. The atmosphere in the hall grew heavy. Edmure suddenly exclaimed in shock, "Petter actually killed my sister Lysa? Why? He is my father's adopted son, and we grew up together." Poor Lysa. Sir Brynden closed his eyes in pain. After a moment, he calmed down and said, "Edmure, we will discuss Lysa later. The most important thing now is—" He looked at King Robb with a grave expression. "The valley has fallen into the hands of the Lannisters. We need to handle this carefully." King Robb murmured, "Conquering the Vale with less than 10,000 men, Greene Kleb." He stood up, walked to the long table, spread out the map, and stared at it for a while. "Uncle and Grandpa, except for the north, the east, south, and west of the Riverlands are all enemies. If we include the enemies invading the north, we are surrounded by Lannisters." There was no trace of fear in Robb's voice. Instead, he showed excitement. The Starks were never afraid of a fight. Sir Brynden also stood up and examined the map. After a moment, he raised his eyes and asked, "My child, have you thought of a plan? If we passively fight the Lannisters, we will be consumed by them sooner or later," Robb said, pointing to King's Landing on the map. "If we can conquer this place, we can turn the tide of the war in one fell swoop." "King's Landing," Sir Brynden muttered, shaking his head slightly. "This is difficult. Not only are there tall walls, but there are also at least 40,000 soldiers." King Robb stared at the map. "I will find a way to lure Lord Tywin out." Sir Brynden raised an eyebrow. "Similar to the plan that was ruined by Edmure?" Robb nodded slightly. "Father taught me that proud enemies often cannot see the danger. After defeating Stannis, we are now Lannisters." Edmure interrupted angrily. "Uncle, aren't you worried about Lysa's child? Little Robert has become a prisoner, and the cruel Lannisters will not spare him just because he is a child. Remember what happened to Rhaegar's child. He is in great danger." King Robb looked up from the map. "Uncle, we also have Lannister prisoners. Lord Tywin will not dare to harm little Robert." Sir Brynden nodded. "The boy sitting on the Iron Throne is called Baratheon. What they want is Duke Aeron to surrender to the Iron Throne, not a dead child." Edmure was still worried. "Uncle, Robb, King, that is Lysa's only child. Little Robert has been weak since he was a child and cannot do without the care of his family." Facing Edmure's pleading eyes, Robb Stark nodded calmly. "Uncle, I am also a member of little Robert's family. If necessary, I will use Jaime Lannister to follow him," Lord Tywin declared regarding Robert Arryn. Sir Brynden patted Edmure on the shoulder and said, "Trout, Runwolf, and Falcon are one family, and we share the hearth." Edmure beamed with happiness. "When the Lannisters are defeated, I will personally lead the troops to reclaim little Robert's eyrie." Sir Brynden patted Edmure again, this time silently. After a pause, Edmure seemed to come to his senses. "The messenger from the Red Keep is at Riverrun. We can discuss this matter with him. If we negotiate earlier, little Robert will suffer less." King Robb's voice was slightly cold. "Messenger from the Red Keep?" Edmure, not noticing the change in Robb's expression, replied, "Tyrion of the Lannister family. He has been here for several days." Sir Brynden scolded, "Edmure, you should have reported this to King Robb immediately." Edmure was stunned for a moment. "I didn't know where you were before, and we were discussing the Frey family just now, so I didn't have a chance to mention it." Sir Brynden reminded him, "I heard you had time to show off your military exploits with the men who came back with King Robb." Edmure's face turned red with embarrassment. Sir Brynden ignored him and looked at King Robb. "Negotiation is another battlefield. Maybe we can ease the current predicament here." In the evening, the leader of the warrior regiment, Varg Hoot, strode into the inn where Earl Bolton was staying. The warriors were originally mercenaries who followed the Lannisters to fight in the Riverlands. Later, they took refuge with Rose Bolton during the Battle of the Noble Heart in the Riverlands. Rumor has it that Varghut had many conflicts with the Amory Lodge Knights in the west when they were plundering the Riverlands. It is said that this was the main reason he chose to rebel. Arriving at the door of a room, Varghut pushed it open directly and saw Rose Bolton standing in front of the brazier. If Count Rose's light-colored eyes hadn't moved slightly, people might have thought he didn't notice the intruder. With a bang, Varghut closed the door of the room, and then an angry voice sounded. "My people told me that you met privately with Adam Marbrand of the Red Keep envoy, Lord Bolton." Earl Roose's slender voice was like the howling cold wind. "Goat," he said, using Varghut's nickname, "I think that leading a team like the Warriors for a long time requires brains." Captain Varg of the Warriors clenched his fists. "Earl Bolton, tell me directly why you met with Lannister secretly. What purpose do you hide?" "It wasn't a secret meeting. At least your people saw it." After the letter with the green ink pad in the brazier burned out, Count Roose turned to look at Captain Varg. "Goat, if necessary, I would choose to avoid your eyes." Captain Varg did not dispel his suspicions because of Count Roose's reasonable explanation. His tone was sarcastic. "Count Bolton, what you want to avoid is the eyes of Riverrun, but you can't do it because this is not your Dreadfort." He added, "Lannister also knows this, so you changed the method to meet openly." Count Rose's ice-sculpted face showed no fluctuations. "Your hypothesis seems reasonable, but guesses are guesses, and facts are facts." He sat down and continued, "Sir Marbrand hopes that I can persuade King Robb to make peace with the Lannisters." Captain Varg came to the chair opposite Lord Roose. He grabbed the back of the chair with one hand. "What did Lannister promise?" "I don't think gold alone can satisfy your appetite, Lord Bolton." After a pause, Earl Roose said, "After peace, the Bolton family will have a seat in the Royal Council." Captain Varg sneered. "The Lannister family is still cunning." He stared at Count Rose and continued, "I thought they would at least promise you the position of Warden of the North." After a moment of silence, Count Roose Bolton said, "You may leave, Goat." Captain Varger grinned, a warning lacing his voice. "Honorable Lord Bolton, if you defect to the Lannisters, it will be very difficult for my warriors." With that, he turned and left. Once Captain Varger had exited the room, the Bolton family's guard captain entered and respectfully asked, "Lord Roose, should we continue to tolerate the Goat's insolence? He shows you a lack of due respect. This man is very dangerous." "Dangerous." Roose Bolton tapped his knees with his pale fingers. "An arrogant person is much safer than one who speaks sweetly while hiding a sword. My guard captain, the Goat's warriors, can help preserve the strength of the Bolton family on the battlefield." The guard captain hesitated, but couldn't help adding, "Lord Roose, this might affect your authority in front of everyone." Silence. Roose Bolton closed his eyes, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you cannot be quiet, there is no need for you to keep your tongue." Chapter 274, Greene's Justice Vale, Longbow Hall. The air was thick with the stench of blood and burning wood as Greene Kleb, surrounded by his blue-robed guards, surveyed the battlefield. The ancient walls of Longbow Hall had borne witness to a fierce siege. Once strong and imposing, the walls were now riddled with arrow holes, cracks, and scorch marks left by fire and boulders. Greene walked along the city wall, where various weapons and pieces of equipment lay scattered on the ground. Broken spears, bent swords, and shattered shields. The corpses of defenders and attackers alike were strewn about, their faces twisted in pain and fear. At the edge of the wall, the remains of a siege tower still smoldered, sending thick smoke into the sky, signaling the end of this brutal battle. Ian Hunter, who had ruled Longbow Hall for nearly 60 years before his sudden death last year, had 3 sons, Jerwood, Eustace, and Harlan. Jerwood and Harlan had perished in earlier battles, chapters 244 and 247 respectively, and Eustace had fallen in today's siege. Lean of the Hershey family spoke next to Greene. "My lord, the legal heir of the Hunter family, is now Jancy Hunter, who is married to Edwin Frey of the twins. He is the great-grandson of Lord Walder Frey and has the right to inherit the twins." Greene continued walking, his voice steady. "Lean, under the rule of Kleb, there will be no Hunter surname among the nobles in the valley." Ryan Hershey's steps faltered slightly, a hint of excitement in his voice. "I understand, Lord Greene." Draz Marco, the eldest son and heir of the old Earl of Anchorage, glanced at Ryan, who looked proud, and said, "Lord Greene, the Marco family is at your disposal." Greene nodded slightly and turned to Draz. "How many casualties did the Marco soldiers suffer?" Draz replied respectfully, "More than 30 men died in the battle, my lord." Greene asked patiently, "How many injured soldiers are there?" Draz scratched his head. "It's hard to say. I estimate about 100. He added frankly, "I'm sorry. I didn't pay close attention to this, sir." With a smile, Greene patted Draz on the shoulder. "Don't ignore them. Every soldier is precious, Draz." "I will remember, Lord Greene," Draz responded loudly. Their conversation reached the ears of the surrounding soldiers who were organizing the battlefield. Lord Greene felt the intense gazes focused on him, but continued his patrol without acknowledging them. The war in the valley, mixed with the fire of revenge on the Crabclaw Peninsula, was bloody. Lord Greene needed to lower the temperature in the valley, so details were crucial for laying the foundation for long-term peace and stability. Whether they were soldiers from the Crabclaw Peninsula or the valley, they were all Kleb's soldiers. The rewards and punishments of the Kleb army were fair, and soldiers were only divided into strong and weak. In the study room of Longbow Hall, Greene was writing a letter to Steward Russell of Seagull Town. The harvest season in the valley would be over in just over a month, and the tax exemption policy promulgated by Greene would increase the supply of grains flowing into the market. This could be used by those with ill intentions to suppress grain prices. If no countermeasures were prepared, Lord Greene's favorable policies could inadvertently cause losses to the farmers in the valley and tarnish his reputation. As a ruler, Greene would not underestimate the greed of human nature. He needed Steward Russell to lead Kleb Trading Company in stabilizing grain prices in the valley. This was also a food reserve to deal with future crises. The quill in Greene's hand continued to move across the parchment. The parchment was stained with ink. The quill began to swing again, brushing across the paper. After finishing the letter, it was placed into an envelope and sealed with blue sealing wax. This blue color was the background of Kleb's flag. After occupying Seagull Town, the wealthy Lord Greene had a businessman customize it. Greene's move was inspired by the top nobles of the 7 kingdoms, such as the golden sealing wax of the Lannister family, the black sealing wax of the Baratheon family, the green sealing wax of the Tyrell family, and the orange sealing wax of the Martell family. The Stark family used gray sealing wax, and the Arryn family, well, they weren't mentioned. With a decisive stamp, Greene pressed the Swamp Marigold seal onto the blue sealing wax. He placed the letter aside and leaned back in his chair. In truth, he preferred golden sealing wax. Perhaps this was why Kleb went to war with the Lannisters. What would Westerosi historians call this war? The War of the Sealing Wax. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Brienne of Tarth entered and announced, "Lord Greene, Legion Legal Officer Virgil wishes to see you." "Invite him in," Greene replied. Virgil hurried in, saluted, and reported, "Lord Greene, Captain Costa, along with 2 of his lieutenants and a dozen soldiers, broke into a manor near Longbow Hall. The manor's owner, a cloth merchant, was seriously injured, and 5 of the manor's servants were killed. Costa and his men raped the women in the manor." He added, "When our army was about to arrive at Longbow Hall, the manor's owner voluntarily surrendered to you. According to Kleb's law, they are subjects under your rule." Greene's eyebrows raised slightly. "My legal officer is someone hindering your disposal of this matter?" Virgil hesitated before speaking directly. The leader of the spearmen, Baron Drell Kiefer, requested that Costa and the others be given a chance to atone for their sins on the battlefield. The Kiefer family, nobles of the Crabclaw Peninsula, had voluntarily submitted to the Kleb family after Greene established his rule there. It was rumored that a member of the Kiefer family once served as a Kingsguard for the Targaryen dynasty. Greene seemed curious. "Arbitrator Virgil, is Drell Kiefer leading the troops to resist? Has anyone drawn a sword?" Virgil shook his head. "Baron Kiefer did not allow my law enforcement soldiers to arrest anyone. He blocked the camp gate with his guards and wanted me to ask you for a chance to atone for their sins." Greene asked again, "Justice Virgil, what do you think?" Virgil puffed out his chest and said without hesitation, "Master Greene, You said that if anyone violates Kleb's law, they will be severely punished. Greene tapped his chin, stood up, and said, I have given you a fair and generous reward. He tied Miss Kongji around his waist and continued, Baron Kiefer has chosen to rebel. Virgil's lower lip trembled. Conspiracy? Rebellion? It's tantamount to treason, Greene replied. He turned to Brienne and said, Assemble the clan's soldiers. Also, send someone to inform Amparo about this and ask her to keep an eye on those mercenaries. Brienne nodded calmly, turned around, and strode away. Ever since Greene brought the Crabclaw Peninsula soldiers into the valley, and with their subsequent legendary victories, the soldiers had gradually developed a sense of arrogance. They believed they were the best in the Seven Kingdoms. Confidence was good, but too much of it made them uncontrollable. If Kleb's law could not restrain his soldiers, even the most elite troops would fall into chaos. Taking this opportunity, Lord Greene wanted the Crabclaw Peninsula soldiers who had swept across the valley to cool down. Chapter 275, The Next Battlefield. When asked about his experience in ruling the fierce savages of the Crabclaw Peninsula, Lord Greene's answer was simple. Be fiercer than them. Reasoning would not work. Kleb's law was their code of conduct, and any violation would be severely punished. Under these strict laws, although the people remained fierce inside, they at least appeared simple on the outside. This was Greene's Kleb soldier. The war horses neighed, and their hooves raised clouds of dust. Greene led his tribe towards the Spear Regiment's garrison. In front of the camp gate, a dozen law enforcement soldiers wearing white feathered pointed helmets were in a tense standoff with the soldiers led by Baron Dreyer. Suddenly, a spear flashing with cold light flew into the open space between the two sides with a whistling sound. The spear penetrated deeply into the ground, its head completely buried, leaving only the handle trembling outside. The ground shook from the impact, causing dust to rise, and the surroundings fell silent. Greene's warhorse paced forward, and the flag officer shouted, Welcome, Lord Greene. After a pause, the soldiers gathered in front of the camp gate knelt down in Greene's direction. Only Baron Dreyer Kiefer hesitated for a moment. Baron Dreyer saw muddy horse hooves in his sight, and Greene's voice sounded from above. Dreyer Kiefer, resisting Kleb's law is a crime of treason. Treason? Baron Dreyer was startled at first, then stood up and looked up at Greene sitting on the horse. Lord Greene, Costa and the others fought bravely in the valley. They are warriors of the Crabclaw Peninsula, the people of the valley. They are spoils of war. They do not deserve the protection of Kleb's law. I am not committing treason. I am seeking justice. Greene's brown eyes moved slightly. It seems you know very well that the people you want to protect have violated Kleb's law. Baron Dreyer opened his mouth to speak. They have military exploits. A war effort is a war effort, but the law is the law, Greene replied, lowering his eyes to look at Baron Dreyer. Without Kleb, would the little Kiefer family be able to appear on the battlefield in the valley? Baron Dreyer glared. The Kiefer family is hundreds of years older than the Kleb family. When the ancestors of the Kiefer family were hunting on the Crabclaw Peninsula, they had not yet. At the end, his voice softened, as if regretting his impulse. Not yet what? Greene interjected. Is this the source of your courage to dare to touch Kleb's law? What a ridiculous reason. Greene glanced at the people kneeling on the ground and said loudly, I am your lord, and Kleb's law is my order. His horse paced back and forth as he continued. So, do whatever I tell you to do. What will be the consequences of violating the Lord's order? Have you forgotten? Justiciar Virgil, record this, Greene announced. The Kiefer family's disobedience to Kleb's law is tantamount to rebellion. I, Greene Kleb, in the name of the Earl of Crabclaw Peninsula and the Guardian of Crabclaw Peninsula, remove the rebel Dreyer Kiefer from his position as commander of the regiment, and deprive the Kiefer family of their titles, castles, and lands. Their tribesmen are charged with rebellion. Baron Dreyer said in panic, You can't do this. After the war 16 years ago, a teenage pregnant woman became the head of the Kleb family. In addition, they lost their old land, so the Kleb family was considered ruined in the eyes of the nobles of the Crabclaw Peninsula. But 16 years later, they didn't even have time to react. The once poor family suddenly became the ruling family of the Crabclaw Peninsula. For the survival of their family, They had no choice but to succumb to Kleb's military might and choose to become a vassal family of the Kleb family. This year, Kleb led the people of the Crabclaw Peninsula to sweep across the long-hated enemies. In the valley, the soldiers' passive surrender gradually turned into willing compliance. Greene Kleb's rewards were Gene, Rouse, but his laws were like shackles, tightly binding them. Among them, the veteran leader of the spearmen, Drell Kiefer, harbored a selfish desire to test the limits. He stood up to excuse a few soldiers who had violated Kleb's law. Otherwise, why would Drell Kiefer, a nobleman of the Crabclaw Peninsula, suddenly feel compassion for ordinary soldiers? Was his test plan not thorough enough? In fact, the fact that Drell Kiefer, a descendant of the first men and a semi-savage nobleman of the Crabclaw Peninsula, could conceive of such a plan, made him appear quite intelligent compared to other nobles of the peninsula. Drell Kiefer's position as commander of the corps was not only to appease the nobility of Crabclaw, but also because Lord Greene valued his relatively clever mind. If today's events had not occurred, when the war in the valley ended, Drell Kiefer would have been canonized as an earl and rewarded with a large area of land in the valley. But there are no ifs in war. Seeing the law enforcement soldiers surrounding him, Baron Dreyer drew his long sword with a loud noise and shouted, "I am not rebelling." "Brennus, use ice to deal with him for me," Greene commanded. Hearing Greene's voice, Brienne, who was carrying the ice sword, nodded and dismounted. The heads of the Kiefer family were solemnly used to consolidate the majesty of Kleb's law and to cool down the fervor of Kleb's army, which was leaving the Crabclaw Peninsula for the first time. The heads of those who broke into the manor would be executed in full view of the public. The people of the valley viewed the inhabitants of the Crabclaw Peninsula as barbarians. As Lord Greene's new subjects, they needed a sense of security from their ruler. That afternoon, a messenger crow carrying the order to deal with the Kiefer family flew to the Crabclaw Peninsula. In addition to executing the criminals, Lord Greene arranged for compensation to be given to the merchant manors that had suffered. That night, after leaving the steaming bathtub and donning his robe, Lord Greene asked, "A letter from the Eagle's Nest?" Brienne handed him a dry towel and said, "The Maester of Longbow Hall told me this is a letter from the Red Castle. Meister Erlin of Airy City forwarded it using a messenger crow." Greene wiped his hands, picked up the letter, and read it by the candlestick. It was a handwritten letter from Cersei Lannister. The main content of the letter was a request for Greene to return to the Red Keep as soon as possible. Although Queen Cersei still used arrogant words in her letter, Greene could sense her uneasiness. The letter described a longing and hinted at the reward she had promised in her garden. Chapter 184. Greene knew Cersei very well, and for her strong personality, this was almost a plea for help. Greene had heard that Lancel was seriously injured in the Battle of King's Landing. Jaime was still a prisoner, and the Old Lion was sitting in the Red Keep. Queen Cersei's situation must be very precarious. Greene's eyes trembled slightly. Could it be that Duke Tywin and Duke Mace had reached an agreement to marry Cersei to Highgarden? Or had he guessed in advance that Lord Tywin planned to arrange her marriage to the Golden Rose? Putting away the letter, Greene paced around the room. He remembered that in the original play, the current Archbishop of the Seven Gods often prayed with the seriously injured Lancel. Lancel became increasingly devout to the Seven Gods and would confess his sins to the Archbishop, including those involving Cersei and Robert I. Then, Cersei, aware of this, would send someone to kill the Archbishop to silence him. The Archbishop was succeeded by the High Sparrow, who had been planning to elevate the power of the Church above that of the royal family. Meanwhile, the Lannister family had their own issues to contend with. "Lord Greene," Brienne said, handing him a glass of wine. "Thank you, Miss Brienne," Greene replied, taking the glass. He took a sip and reflected on the recent events. With Margaery's arrival in King's Landing, things had become even more lively. He also needed to visit Dragonstone to see Melisandre. He had sent the blood of 2 kings to Winterfell. Robert was 2 illegitimate sons. Chapter 176, Chapter 259. Greene, who proclaimed himself the future commander-in-chief of the Living Coalition, was hopeful that Melisandre could use the king's blood to solve the crisis of the White Walkers. However, He knew this was just a fantasy. His main goal was to prevent Lord Ned, who seemed resigned to death, from leading the entire North to pledge allegiance to Stannis. With Robert's bastard sons standing between Lord Ned and Stannis, and Melisandre's thirst for the king's blood, it was difficult for both parties to reach a consensus. Stannis was no longer the man he once was. Melisandre's influence on him was growing deeper. Greene took another sip of his wine. For the future battle between the living and the dead, the North needed stability. He left the bathroom, entered the study, and stood in front of a map. Putting down his wine glass, he paused and asked, "Brienne, do you miss the Stormlands?" Brienne shook her head silently, the memories of that place not being pleasant. She picked up the flagon and poured more wine into Greene's empty cup. Greene didn't press the issue. Instead, he changed the subject. "We will go to the Red Keep soon," he said, rubbing his hair. "On the way, we will stop at Maidenpool." After a moment of silence, Brienne asked, "Lord Greene, do you want to leave the Vale?" Greene swirled the wine in his glass and replied, "Are you worried about the peace of the Vale?" Seeing Brienne nod, he continued, "My fiancé and the Maester of Whispering Castle will manage the Vale on my behalf." He rubbed his brows and added, "Opportunities are rare, and I don't have many choices." Brienne's clear blue eyes moved slightly. She opened her mouth and asked, "Is this the real reason why you drained the blood of the Knights of the Vale?" Greene smiled. "There is no good reason. As I told you before, Chapter 247, this is a cruel war, and opportunities are rare." He rubbed the body of the wine glass with his fingers. "The Riverlands are my next battlefield, and this is also a rare opportunity." The next day, Greene handed over the finishing work at Longbow Hall to Sir Amparo and led his soldiers towards the Eyrie. "I love the smell of Mermaid Harbor the most. I have fallen deeply in love with it. This is my home," one of the soldiers said. "You said the same thing in Whispering City," another replied. "Oh, maybe I love them all. I love Master Greene's Crabclaw Peninsula so much. The Vale will soon be Lord Greene's land as well. I love Death Valley too. Is that okay? It depends on where Lord Greene will arrange us." "Do you think that for our contribution this time, we can be canonized as wealthy knights by Lord Greene?" Proprietary knights are sworn knights who have been rewarded with castles and lands by their lords. Under their rule are farmers, blacksmiths, and soldiers. Some wealthy proprietary knights even have sworn knights loyal to them, but they have no right to uphold justice on their own lands. Those who violate the law must be reported to the loyal lord for his decision. I feel that our achievements are not as good as those of the Vale. "Oh, Montan, I shouldn't be talking to you about these things." "And Guy, I'm telling the truth." A fat and tall figure stood at one of the piers of Mermaid Harbor. Behind them was a tough old man holding a wooden box. In one hand, a middle-aged man almost entirely covered in hair. They had different body shapes, but what they had in common was that they looked like beggars who had been wandering for a long time. Following Greene's orders, they went to the Golden Company to bring back the head of John Connington, Munton Waters, Ungay, Barristan Selmy, and Jorah Mormont. And Guy turned around, grinned, and said, "Welcome to Kleb's territory." Munton naively echoed, "Welcome." Barristan glanced at the bleak-looking dock and said, "Thank you both for the welcome. I hope that we can at least clean up before meeting Her Royal Highness. This is proper etiquette." Sir Jorah combed his dirty hair back with his fingers and asked, "Where should we go now?" And Guy shrugged and said, "I didn't expect that we would successfully escape pursuit, only to be embarrassed by pirates." He pointed to the tallest building in Mermaid Harbor. "Go there." On the way to the Government Affairs Office, the group of four heard Munton's naive voice. "And Guy, there was a battle here not long ago." And Guy retracted his sharp gaze, nodded, and said, "It seems that the scale was not small." After walking a few steps, he suddenly sighed, "It's only been a few months, and I feel like we've missed a lot of credit." Munton comforted his friend. "The credit this time will not be small, and Guy." And Guy first glanced left and right, then approached Munton and lowered his voice. "I even thought about my last name. I'll call it On Guy. Heh, as long as my descendants are still alive, my name will exist." Munton blinked his eyes blankly and said, "Ungai Ungai?" Ungai showed an excited look and said, "How's it sound, Munton?" Munton nodded and said, "Not bad. Very good. Guy looked suspiciously at his friend, who appeared honest but was cunning inside, and said, Really good? I want to hear the truth. Under Guy's questioning, Munton looked away from the barbecue stall on the roadside with difficulty and replied, It's indeed good because it's easy to remember. And Guy's eyes widened slightly. It's just easy to remember, so you say it's good? Munton said seriously, My mother told me that if the first and last names are too long, people will be annoyed. Sir Barristan Selmy, walking behind them, remained silent. You know a lot, Munton chuckled. Chapter 276, The Three Children of the True Dragon. Barona opened the wooden box brought by Sir Barristan. Daenerys looked at the head inside and said, Is this John Connington? Hearing this, Sir Barristan, who was kneeling on the ground, raised his head and replied, It's absolutely true, Your Highness. Daenerys nodded slightly, raised her hand to signal, and Barona called the waiter to move the wooden box. After a moment of silence, Daenerys moved forward and came to the front of Sir Barristan. She raised her chin slightly and said, Sir, thank you for your contribution. Barristan lowered his face respectfully, his tone sincere. Your Highness, my road to atonement has just begun. He raised his eyes and looked at Daenerys. I ask that I serve you for the rest of my life. After a pause, Daenerys called, Barona. Hearing this, Barona turned and left. Not long after, her figure reappeared in the small hall, with a long sword in her hand. Taking the long sword, Daenerys lowered her eyes and looked at the blade, which gleamed coldly, and said, Sir Barristan, it is back. Sir Barristan took the sword with both hands solemnly. When he saw the sword, he was moved and said, It. A gentle smile appeared on Daenerys's beautiful face, and she said, Yes, it is back. You once left it at the feet of the usurper. Chapter 168. When you left the Red Keep, Lord Greene kept it. After a pause, she continued, I hope you will pick up the sacred sword of oath again and recast your glory. Sir Barristan's eyes were full of tears. The old knight has no need for glory. He will walk on the road of atonement for the rest of his life. Rise, sir. I name you my guard. I swear to the gods that I will loyally protect you until the end of my life. Daenerys nodded slightly and repeated, Rise, my iron guard. Sir Barristan stood up slowly. His brows, which had been furrowed for several months, finally relaxed, and his eyes were a little brighter, as if he had suddenly become several years younger. Unconsciously, Daenerys also felt relaxed. Sir Barristan, for safety, you and I need to hide our identities from outsiders. My external identity is Princess Layla of Summer Island, Chapter 212. Sir Barristan nodded and said, Your Highness, your decision is wise. I will continue to use the name I used in Essos, Arstan the Whitebeard. After a pause, he added, I will also prepare a visor. Daenerys pursed her lips and smiled. She nodded slightly and invited, Sir, come with me for a walk. I want to hear your stories about Essos. The back garden of the Mermaid Harbor Government Office. After hearing about Sir Barristan and others' experiences in the Golden Company, Daenerys praised, Sir, the knight is fearless. You are an amazing warrior. After a while, she paused and suddenly said, Tomorrow we will leave here by boat, and our destination is the Eyrie. I heard about the fighting in the Vale. Sir Barristan hesitated for a moment, and then asked, Has Lord Greene become the new owner of the Vale? After a pause, he added, I want to know if he is legitimate. After speaking, there was a pause. Sir Barristan bowed slightly and said, Please forgive the old knight's stupidity. You are the heir of the Targaryen family. As long as you allow it, everything Lord Greene does in the Seven Kingdoms is legitimate. Daenerys smiled, moved her gaze to the blooming flowers, and said, This place is different from the Seven Kingdoms mentioned by Viserys. He told me. When he set foot on Westeros with his soldiers and horses, the lords of the Seven Kingdoms would rise up to serve him one after another. They would roar with justice and fight against the usurper for the Targaryen Iron Throne. Her slender white fingers gently brushed the flowers. Brother always believed in this, and I believe he still believed it before he passed away. But I know now that it was a dream he imagined. Here, this land, more than 10 years have passed. The Seven Kingdoms have recognized the Iron Throne of the usurper. Daenerys sighed softly. Perhaps the mercy of the gods spares King Viserys from experiencing betrayal firsthand. If he were to encounter the cruel truth, he might go completely mad. Sir Barristan tried to comfort her. As you said, more than 10 years have passed. The usurper's power has grown stronger, and the lords who still hold the Targaryens in their hearts have either submitted or gone into hiding. Even if it takes 10 or 20 years, Baratheon will not be able to conceal the identity of the usurper forever. Just because no one mentions it doesn't mean it is forgotten, Your Highness. Daenerys walked forward for a while before stopping to look at the old knight. Sir, do you want me to reclaim the Iron Throne? Sir Barristan pondered for a moment before replying, I will be honest with you. As a redeemer, I long to see the world return to its rightful state. The fight for the Iron Throne represents danger, but as a redeemer, it is even more perilous. I wish to see you in peace. He performed a chest-cup salute. If you wish to reclaim the Iron Throne of Targaryen, I will ride into battle for you without fear of sacrifice. If not, I will guard your safety day and night with my sword. He nodded slightly. Barristan Selmy is at your disposal, Princess Daenerys. Thank you for your candor, Sir Barristan, Daenerys said after a pause. My fiancé told me that he will reveal my true identity to the world at our wedding, that is, Daenerys Targaryen. He also said it won't take more than a year. The usually calm old knight was momentarily startled. As far as I know, your fiancé is not an impulsive man. He must be very aware of the consequences of such a move. I admit that your fiancé is a powerful knight, but no matter how powerful, he cannot withstand the siege of the usurpers. Daenerys's lips curved slightly. I had my worries too, but his love gives me courage. The always steady old knight was startled again. He felt compelled to give blunt advice. I mean, no offense, but the usurpers, who are now fighting for their own interests, will reunite because of the appearance of a Targaryen. Earl Greene is not their match. Glancing at Sir Barristan, who looked worried, Daenerys asked, Sir, can the usurper's army conquer the swamps and valleys of the Crab Claw Peninsula? Without waiting for his answer, she continued, Can the usurper's army break through the bloody gate in the Vale? Sir, I am Stormborn. My impression of my family comes from Viserys's words. I can honestly say I have not forgotten the hatred of the Targaryen family, but I do not feel a strong hatred in my heart. But the hem of her skirt swirled as Daenerys turned around, looking at Sir Barristan with her violet eyes. If they disrupt my life, when my 3 children grow up, they will have to pay with blood. Sir Barristan's eyes widened in surprise. Children? Children? 3? Chapter 277. The most precious gem outside the government hall. Jorah Mormont immediately approached when he saw Sir Barristan's figure finally appear. Sir Jorah nodded slightly towards the old knight and was about to pass by, but was blocked by a hand. Bear Islander, Her Royal Highness the Princess did not summon you. Sir Jorah was stunned for a moment. He seemed to be in disbelief. Why? You are lying. There is no way she will not see me. Sir Barristan frowned slightly. This is the order of Her Royal Highness the Princess. Jorah Mormont, although Her Royal Highness did not cancel your banishment, she did forgive your crime of informing, which is a great mercy. Looking at Sir Jorah, who still looked in disbelief, he added, She also rewarded you with 2 large boxes of golden dragons. You should be grateful. Sir Jorah's tone was filled with complaints. I risked life and death for Her Royal Highness the Princess. Old man, you should know very well how dangerous this mission was. Our ability to come back alive is the blessing of the old and new gods. Sir Barristan frowned and said, Loyalty is an honor. Honorary knights ask for nothing in return. The princess rewards us for our loyalty. That is her generosity and kindness. He looked straight at Sir Jorah with his deep eyes. I am very confused about your behavior now. Mormont, you should not throw away the little honor you have left. Sir Jorah glanced at the extra blood-red cloak and sword on Barristan's body and said angrily, The usurper's lackey, you are not worthy of talking to me about honor. Sir Barristan's big wrinkled hand solemnly passed over his cloak and sword. I admit my stupidity, and I also admit that I am unworthy of honor. I will always be a redeemer, and I will atone for my sins. Die with a smile on your face. After a pause, Sir Jorah said with a painful expression, I don't want honor or treasure. I just want to stay with Dany. Sir Barristan interrupted coldly. She is now Princess Layla of Summer Island. You should know exactly what this means. I will never allow anyone to put her in danger. the Bear Island whistleblower who has just been forgiven. Ser Jorah clenched his fists tightly. Old man, I will never betray Her Highness the Princess. You are insulting me. Sir Barristan's expression remained cold. In that case, stop your childish and ridiculous behavior. After a moment of silence, his fists unclenched. Ser Jorah seemed to be pleading. I just want to stay with Her Royal Highness the Princess. Sir Barristan stared at Ser Jorah, whose face was full of pleading. You are too selfish. Your selfishness may insult the honor of Her Highness the Princess. I will keep an eye on you, Bear Islander. Ser Jorah stared at Sir Barristan and gritted his teeth. Old man, I don't need your preaching. Don't ignore my warning. Sir Barristan put his hand on the hilt of his sword. We fought side by side. You should know very well. Although I am old, my sword can still cut you as easily as cheese, former informer, Jorah Mormont. The next day, the sun had just risen, and the golden sunlight shone on the sea, making the waves sparkle as if covered with a layer of golden gauze. The waves gently slapped the hull of the Black Pearl, making a soft sound. Maester Al from Crabclaw Peninsula held a thick book and tremblingly entered the cabin where Daenerys was. Daenerys, who was sitting at the table, looked up from the open book and said, Thank you, my dear Maester Al. After saluting, Maester Al blinked his eyes and said, It is an honor for me to be your teacher. The old man is very energetic, Your Royal Highness. Daenerys pursed her lips and smiled. Maester Al, thank you. Maester Al sat down tremblingly and said, Your Highness, would you like to continue learning about the history of the valley today? Daenerys nodded slightly. Yes, it is the part I need to learn most now. Shasha, Maester Al said while turning the page. Okay, maybe you don't have to be so. Learning requires patience. It's like walking, one step at a time, he suggested. How about hearing some interesting things that happened in the valley today? Thank you for your advice, Daenerys said, leaning back in her chair. After a pause, she continued, I just thought of something. I will soon govern the valley on Greene's behalf. She took a breath and added, I'm worried that I won't do well. After all, I have no experience in politics. I'll be honest with you, Bachelor Al said, grinning and revealing his few remaining teeth. I'm also very nervous. When I was selected as the Bachelor of Whispering Castle by the school 50 years ago, when I started teaching Lord Greene how to read, even not long ago, I never dreamed that I would become the Bachelor of the ruler of the valley. Daenerys couldn't help but smile. I believe you, she said. The old bachelor nodded kindly. Trust is the most precious gem in the world. You and he trust each other, and under your and his rule, the valley will be peaceful and stable for a long time. In Riverrun City, in the hotel rented by Tyrion Lannister, Edmure Tully swung the wineglass in his hand and said, Lord Tyrion, King Robb will summon you soon. I guess it will be in 2 or 3 days, maybe more. Tyrion rolled his eyes. Lord Edmure, can you set a time to receive me? He asked, taking a sip of wine. I want to comfort poor Sir Jaime with beauty and wine as soon as possible. Edmure hesitated for a moment. Perhaps I can mention it to King Robb to see if we can improve Sir Jaime's treatment. Thank you for your kindness. You are a kind man, Tyrion said, then changed his tone. But are you sure? At this time, King Stark has time to pay attention to such a trivial matter? Edmure scratched his head. You know? He asked. Tyrion chuckled, picked up the golden flagon, poured wine into Edmure's glass, and said, At least I can hear the servants in the hotel talking about the beauty of the new queen. They said her beauty is very charming. After a pause, he added sharply, I think King Stark's change of marriage partner has confirmed this. There were only 2 of them in the room, and Tyrion lowered his voice. I heard that you want to marry a Frey lady on behalf of your nephew? Edmure seemed surprised. You even know this? Tyrion poured wine into his own glass and smiled. Ha ha! I also heard this news from the hotel servant. I think most people know it. Edmure sighed. As Robb's uncle, I must help him. Tyrion nodded in agreement. When I was Prime Minister in King's Landing, my biggest task was to clean up the mess that my nephew, the king, made. Edmure and Tyrion looked at each other, then drank their wine in silence. When he drank the 7th cup, Edmure suddenly said, Lord Tyrion, do you think all the ladies of the Frey family are not as ugly as Lord Frey? Although his uncle had promised to help him talk to Lord Frey about the matter, Edmure's heart was still filled with worry. Tyrion's eyes moved slightly. Marquise Frey has married so many wives, he can always give birth to several beautiful daughters, right? He said. Before Edmure could be happy, Tyrion laughed again. But why would he give you a beautiful daughter? I heard that Marquise Frey is not a broad-minded man. I guess he will choose a daughter who is difficult to marry and vent his anger fiercely. Spring Festival Break Announcement. Dear readers, we will be taking a short break of 3 to 5 days during the Spring Festival. I wish you all a happy Spring Festival and all the best in advance. Warm regards. Apologies for the extended absence. I'm currently visiting relatives and won't be back for a few more days. This is my only long vacation of the year, so I want to make the most of it. I didn't plan the timing well, and for that, I apologize. I'll return as soon as possible and make up for the lost time once I'm back. Thank you for your understanding. Chapter 280, Family Interests. Tyrion Lannister's tongue was unforgiving. You want to tell me that you gave up your excellent character as a knight for the so-called duty, right, sir? Sir Adam's icy face turned into a scowl. As he gripped the handle of his sword, a lazy voice sounded from behind him. Hey, if you draw your sword, you will die. Tyrion raised his glass in the direction behind Sir Adam. Bronn, you came just in time, my reliable captain of the guard. Bronn walked over slowly with one hand behind his back and a dagger in his other hand. He bent down to salute, then looked up at Tyrion with a lewd smile on his face. Master Tyrion, I am always at your command. Seeing Bronn's face, Tyrion was always worried that he would betray him on the spot, and every time he had to give away a bag of golden dragons to give himself some peace of mind. He reached for the money bag at his waist out of habit, but his movements were sudden. Now was not the time to buy safety. There were outsiders. He raised his eyebrows at Bronn. Bronn seemed to understand all of a sudden, and his smile became more obscene. Sir Adam looked sideways at Bronn and said coldly, I don't like dirty mercenaries. Tyrion said with a smile, Don't forget the Battle of King's Landing. It was Bronn who helped me defeat Stannis. When he returns to King's Landing, he will be a knight of the Blackwater River, anointed with holy oil by the Archbishop himself. After Tyrion finished speaking, Bronn shook his right arm and gracefully saluted Tyrion again. Thank you, Master Tyrion, for your support. Sir Adam said contemptuously, You are just a lucky mercenary. This cannot change your dirty background. Sir Adam had dark copper-colored shoulder-length hair. The smile on Bronn's face deepened. I am not a delicate flower like you. Tonight, I will hold your head and let my semen fill your mouth. Bronn's hand grasped the handle of the dagger at his waist. What a pervert, Tyrion shuddered. He sneered and said, Bronn, I'm sorry, Sir Adam is a dog sent by my father. I can't give you his head yet. Bronn withdrew his hand with a smile. As you command, my lord. Sir Adam looked at Tyrion and said angrily, Tyrion, you are insulting. Tyrion grinned. Knight of House Malbrand, it is your honor to be insulted by the noble Lannister lion. You. Sir Adam's face turned red. Tyrion waved his hand and said, Stand back and report my conspiracy to Lord Tywin quickly. Take the time and don't let the kind father be frightened by his well-behaved son. He is not a strong young man. You should think more about our master in the West. Sir Adam snorted coldly, flicked the red cloak of the Lannister family, turned around, and strode away. After Sir Adam left, Bronn picked up the flagon, poured wine into the cup Edmure had used, swung the cup, took a sip of wine gracefully, and said, Lord Tyrion, are you serious? With a snap, Bronn's other hand flexibly caught the purse thrown by Tyrion, weighed it, and immediately smiled. He put the glass down, took a few steps back facing Tyrion, and stood there respectfully. Tyrion grinned. It seems that I have once again succeeded in stopping your traitorous heart. Bronn responded with a smile. Master Tyrion, you are generous and wise. I will always be yours. I at least believe that your loyalty will not change today. Tyrion straightened his hair, which he had deliberately messed up in order to act in front of Edmure, and said, Bronn, my dear father kicked me off the Prime Minister's chair, and Joffrey died in battle, Lord Commander in Gold, Chapter 2 of 58. Lord Tywin would not leave such a delicious cake to me. Tyrion moved to lean on the back of the chair more comfortably, and continued, You also know very well that my Queen Mother's sister loves me to death and I'm sure she is looking forward to my return in King's Landing." He spread his hands and said, "Cersei will not let me go, including the people around me. Your head can also excite my Queen Mother's sister." Bronn showed a lewd smile again, and Dee nodded in understanding. Tyrion ignored Bronn's joke and said sternly, "I will not sit and wait for death. Not only must we save Jaime, but we must also save ourselves." Bronn stopped smiling, thought for a moment, and said, "Lord Tyrion, weren't you planning to marry Queen Cersei to the heir of Highgarden?" Tyrion swayed the wineglass gently, staring at the thin ripples in the glass. He spoke slowly. "That was just a contingency plan. Before defeating Stannis, there is one situation, and after defeating Stannis, there is another. Cersei won't give in easily, and everyone knows she still has a sword in her hand." After a pause, he continued, "As long as the benefits are rich enough, Cersei's sword will become very sharp. When my sister, the Queen Mother, is willful, she will choose to ignore it, and I will not underestimate her." Bronn's eyes moved slightly, and he said, "That famous general, Count Kleb?" Tyrion raised his eyes to look at Bronn, nodded, and said, "We cannot ignore his other identity. He is Cersei's chief affairs officer and has always been." Bronn smiled and said, "Isn't Earl Kleb your good friend?" "A good friend." Tyrion climbed off the chair, stretched out, and said, "But I can't afford a higher price than my sister. Cersei is the regent, and I am not the prime minister. What she can offer, I can't match." He grinned, "Including the warmth in bed." The mercenary Bronn nodded in understanding. "Lord Tyrion, if it were me, I would stand by the Queen Mother. No one can refuse the temptation of power and beauty." Tyrion clasped his small hands behind his back and stepped towards the window, saying as he walked, "So, only after Cersei leaves King's Landing can I dare to join forces with Earl Greene with confidence." Bronn followed Tyrion, scratching his cheek. "It's so complicated." Standing in front of the window, Tyrion stared at the sky for a while and said, "Lord Tywin needs a stable 7 kingdoms. Otherwise, he can only watch the Tyrell family grow stronger. This is not in the Lannister family's interest." The blocking dark clouds dispersed, shedding dazzling sunshine. Tyrion narrowed his eyes slightly and said, "If the Riverlands and the North can be resolved through marriage, Lord Tywin will never give up this opportunity. Because it is in the interests of House Lannister. As the obedient son of a kind father, I naturally have to serve him." Tyrion turned to look at Bronn. "As the lovely brother of a gentle sister, I naturally have to choose a good husband and a warm new home for her." Bronn scratched his head and, "Sir, I have to admit, the relationship between your family is really good." Tyrion laughed. "Don't be too envious of the Lannister family's love for each other." Bronn seemed to be sighing. "My lord, I'm a little lucky that my father is an alcoholic who doesn't care. I have to apologize to him for my ignorance when I have the chance." After a pause, Bronn said, "So, you ordered me to leave an opportunity for Sir Adam to eavesdrop?" Tyrion nodded slightly. "In my father's eyes, I am a prodigal. He trusts his vassals more than his own son." Bronn couldn't help but sigh again. "We really do love each other. I said, don't be too envious. If you're hungry, go find something to eat. Let's go." Although Bronn was puzzled about Tyrion's next step, his curiosity was never great. He silently followed Tyrion towards the restaurant.